My boyfriend planned a trip behind my back with 4 strippers. I really can't tell if I'm under or overreacting. I feel like what my boyfriend is doing is obviously disrespectful, but he keeps telling me to chill out about the whole situation. My boyfriend enjoys going to raves and concerts, which is cool, but I'm not into it as much. Usually, I'm pretty relaxed about him hanging out with other people, including girls. But this time is different and I'm feeling really upset. A while back, my friends and I planned a trip to Miami. I was excited, but then this girl I don't get along with decided to join. I didn't want to spend so much money to be around her, so I decided not to go. However, my boyfriend still wanted to go, and I didn't want to hold him back, so I said it was okay. My best friend was going too, and I trusted her to look out for him. When he came back from the Miami trip, he surprised me by booking another one to Ohio for another music festival. He didn't even ask if I wanted to go this time. He mentioned that I might not like the music, which I understood. But later, I found out that my best friend wasn't going, and he was going with a group of 4 girls who happened to be strippers. I don't judge them for their job, but the situation made me a bit uncomfortable, especially since my boyfriend tends to be a big flirt. We've had issues in the past where I felt like he was disrespecting our relationship by flirting right in front of me. Before the trip, I noticed that he had been hanging out with these girls a few times and didn't invite me. What bothered me even more was that he was buying them drinks at bars. It struck me as odd because he rarely takes me out or pays for our dates. We've been together for 8 years, and I felt like he should treat me better. During his trip to Ohio, he wasn't responding to my texts. Then I saw on one of the girls' Snapchat that they were driving 22 hours from Texas to Ohio. This made me quite upset because back when we were in a long-distance relationship, I used to make all the effort to visit him, and he hardly ever came to see me. He didn't even discuss this plan with me. I feel like he's treating this situation differently than he would if I were involved. Am I overreacting, or should I talk to him about my concerns?
I'm thinking about eliminating my family from my life. The last few months have really pushed me over the edge. I've recently pushed myself from a cold to a full lung infection because I've had to work or suffer getting yelled at over how my generation is weak and has no work ethic. I never take time off work. I rarely go to doctors. I have paid for all my own schooling and gotten scholarships. I went to university twice by the age of 16, again through scholarships and my own savings, and I'm almost finished high school. I pay for all my own expenses and some of my family's. I've been working since 12. I have my own car which I found entirely myself, a license, and more recently a partner. My family has always had a distaste for me and I've never known why. I do nothing but try to prove my worth to them and it is exhausting. I had a severely abusive upbringing, and am diagnosed PTSD, clinical depression and severe anxiety disorder as a result. However, I never let this get in the way of my career. My most recent hiccup was an urge to not live in June. This will tie in soon. Anyways, the thing that has pushed me this far as to cut them off, is that since I started dating and they found out, their distaste for me has skyrocketed, seemingly also because I took a few months before telling them about this to figure out where I stood in the relationship. I intend to marry this man. He is only 9 months older than me and also a little different, but that's okay. My family hate him, and his family loves me. My family hate his, despite them never meeting, amplified by the fact that when my boyfriend found out I intended to not live, he panicked and got his mom to call the police. My stepmom resents his family for taking that step, despite the fact that if they hadn't I wouldn't be here today. My partner is between jobs too, amplifying my dad's hate for him. Despite these, he has a career path and unlike me comes from a wealthy, caring family. I want a family and to marry this man. And has improved my well-being and grades despite my parents' concerns of it doing the opposite. My family overlooks that he cares for me and has improved my life and well-being. He has overall contributed to my confidence and gratitude for life, and motivates me to do my best. They ignore this, and have been telling me to detransition and look for a normal, heterosexual relationship once I graduate. I do love my family, I just don't particularly like them, especially when it comes to my mental health. Would I be the a-hole for moving out and cutting them off the moment I possibly can? Women who watch adult videos, what do you look for? 1. I look for bad actresses. I want to see real pleasure or real boredom. I can't stand when women fake bigo from something that clearly does nothing. 2. Something real and amateur over high production and fake bigos. 3. Men making noises or sensual dirty talking. 4. A noisy man. I do not want to hear the woman slobbering on him. I want to hear how he feels. 5. Question for the ladies. Do adult videos ads show hot dilfs around your location that can't wait to destroy you? 6. Real coitus at home in their actual home setting on their actual bed that looks genuine. I can't stand these plumber, dentist or I went for a massage and got more crap. 7. Romantic stuff where both parties are featured. I hate finding stuff where all you can see is the woman's face. 8. Might be a bit of a cheat but rating is so much better. 9. Usually BDSM related content, preferably where the women resemble me and are restrained in a way that their kitty cat and back end are fully presented for the enjoyment of others and they can't pull away. I tend to get going quite a bit on public humiliation adult video as well, where the settings tend to be code as parties with women being freely used by those in attendance. I have so much control and responsibility in my everyday life, that I thrive on relinquishing that in private. 10. I like when the guy has a muscular back end and huge boys, and the camera focuses on that from behind.
My lousy husband gifted me a shop bots for Christmas. I waited for a year to plot my revenge. My husband was lousy at giving gifts, but he would get what he wanted for himself. It was the holiday season and I came home to a large box wrapped up about 10 days before Christmas. He said it was for me and was so excited. Mind you, we have always been pretty broke, so I always bought for our children and his greedy family. We always did without. For some reason, I wasn't that excited about this gift. Intuition. Well, Christmas Eve comes and we open gifts. He gets all excited, telling me that I am going to love this present. I opened the box to find a shop vac. We had hardwood and linoleum, so I always swept and mopped, so I had no need for it. He told me that it is wonderful because it cleans up the garage, his domain. He said it worked great cause he already tried it before wrapping it up. I was pissed. He bought it for himself. I would have been happy with a $5 necklace that turned my neck green. That night, I wouldn't even go to bed with him. He came into the living room where I was laying down and told me to come to bed. I told him I wouldn't because I couldn't look at him. He then tells me how I was extremely selfish because gifts were to be what we as a family could use, not what we would want. I lay there all night and plotted my revenge. I had to wait for a year, but like they say, best served cold. I kept quiet and told nobody of my plan for revenge. 50 weeks later I found it. I wasn't even looking for it, but it was staring right at me as if to say, here I am and it is time. It was in a huge box. I quickly purchased the gift, got some wrapping paper for it and hid it. Didn't want any sneaky peeks. While he was at work on Christmas Eve, I put the present under the tree. Took 2 rolls of cheap wrapping paper and I put some ribbon and a bow on it. It also had a nice weight for it. We start opening gifts and I wait a bit. Finally, his eyes light up seeing this big box and finding out it was his. He was so excited, and I told him that this is specially bought for him. He opens the box to find a case of toilet paper. I then quoted him that Christmas was not for what we would want but what we as a family need or could use. We all wipe. He was furious. He complained to his brothers and everyone. My family and his brothers told him that he deserved the toilet paper. To this day, no husband will ever buy a vacuum cleaner for their wives as gifts.
Update: a woman from high school expressed interest in me and I felt a strange new type of anger. It's been a strange 24 hours and I'm not quite sure what to do. About half an hour after posting here a couple days ago, I let her know that I'm presently not in the market for a relationship and that we are better suited as friends. She seemed to receive the news well and I felt the dynamic between us wouldn't change. We already had standing Friday night plans to try out a new Korean barbecue spot about 10 minutes driving distance away from my home and I confirmed she was still interested. She explained she doesn't get too many opportunities to just go out and have fun these days and she was looking forward to it. Plus her mom had already shifted her schedule so she could babysit. The dinner went well and we got to catch up on interests, hobbies, and even talked politics to an extent. We both even liked Black Mirror and neither of us had caught up with the new season. After a few bottles of soju it was getting late but neither of us had responsibly drank. To avoid an expensive 50-minute Uber back to her place, she asked if she could come sober up at my place since it's much closer. We split the bill then Ubered back to my place and we started watching the new Black Mirror season. Neither of us was really in a state to pay attention to the show and we ended up cuddling and later on sleeping together. When we woke up this morning and got dressed, I called us both an Uber back to the restaurant so we could both pick up our cars. When she messaged me after getting home, she mentioned how next time we need to plan our dates better. At first I thought she was joking so I replied with a laugh emoji, but then she started trying to schedule a future date. I then clarified that I was not in the market to date and what happened last night was just intimacy. She didn't take the news well at all. She hasn't stopped blowing up my phone accusing me of using her or misleading her. She's now escalated to insults and veiled threats. I'm not even responding at this point. I feel like I was really clear that I wasn't interested in dating and told her that up front. It's been 2 hours of almost constant texts. I want a free vacation and was going to take my sister and her kids with me, but chose to take my friend and her kids instead because my sister is a terrible mother. Long story short, I won a raffle at my job for an all-expense paid family vacation. It wasn't a super fancy prize to Disneyland or anything crazy. It was just a nice 3-day stay at this little beach house in place. It was for 4 people. I asked my new boyfriend at the time to go but he couldn't because of school. I told nobody I won but when I came down to visit my family for the weekend my sis was there with my niece/nephew, who are the 2 brattiest kids I've met, thanks to sis not disciplining them ever. I love them but she lets them get into everything and never watches them unless someone, me or our mom, yells at her to get off her butt and watch them. Visiting is always a chore because I end up watching them to give our mom a break. It's pathetic. I'd considered inviting them to come before I arrived. But the longer I was there the more I hated the idea. By the time I was packing up to go home I knew I wasn't inviting them. She dumped them on me the entire time, like usual, and I knew if they came it would turn into me babysitting them while she had a vacation. So I didn't mention it. Next day I told my friend Megan cause she has 2 kids, older than Sis's kids and very well behaved, and she's a single working mom who could use the vacay. I offered to invite her along if she would pay for the gas to get us all to Slash from there and she happily agreed. We went, had a blast, I got a pretty good tan, we ate lots of buffet food and did fun family type activities all weekend before coming back. I posted some pics I took, nothing in your face, just a couple cute ones of me/us on the beach. When I got back and before lunch even rolled around sis was blowing up my phone asking how the hell I could afford a vacation. I told her it was a raffle prize. She asked who won and I said me. She flipped her poop, demanding to know why I hadn't invited her. I was honest and said cause I didn't want to babysit her kids for my entire vacation. She called me an a-hole, said I knew she needed a vacation and then hung up on me. Later mom called asking why I promised my niece/nephew I'd take them on vacation. I said I never told them I would. Turns out sis told them we were all supposed to go on vacation but I ruined it and now they couldn't. So they sobbed all day. I explained my side and mom said I was mean to not invite my sister and her kids. But she dropped it after I said I wasn't babysitting my whole vacation. I could have invited them but I just didn't want to.
What's the creepiest thing you can say to a person who just woke up? We've been waiting for you to wake up. You don't know me, but hear me out. Precisely 8 hours, 13 minutes and 41 seconds of sleep whilst staring them in the eyes the second they open. I'm surprised the camera flash didn't wake you up. Thank you. Then you run away as fast as you can, never to be seen again. Whisper in their ears as you hug them I know and just let their imagination run free.
My fiancée went no contact with her father years ago, but my mom announced that she had invited him to our wedding. Now, she's included on the list of the uninvited parents. My fiancé and I are getting married in 2 weeks after 13 years of friendship and 4 years of dating. Planning the wedding has been uncomplicated and fun. We included my mother a lot. For example, my fiancé took her dress shopping. The reason is that my fiancé has always had a good relationship with my parents, and it grew much closer over the past year after her mother died. They see her as another child, and my fiancé immensely appreciates that. As for my fiancé's father, she went NC when she was 15, even before he hadn't played an important role in her life. His behavior was one cause of her depression and low self-esteem. It took her years to heal. He refused to send my fiancée to school and constantly bullied her throughout her childhood. She's happy with how things are now. I never met the man, so neither of us considered inviting him to the wedding. My mother, however, won't understand why we won't invite him. Mom is a retired psychologist. She's had some experience with children-parent reunification, and she thinks my fiancé needs that even more after the fiancé's mom's death. My fiancé and I both have shut my mom down plenty of times. We both made it clear that this man would not know anything about my fiancé's life nor would he be welcome anywhere near the wedding. For a while, my mom shut up. My mom doesn't know my fiancé's father. The other night, we had dinner with my family. My mom had an announcement. She looked my fiancé's father up and went to see him. Then she invited him to our wedding. She seemed so pleased. My family was appalled and angry. They all knew what had happened. My fiancé somehow remained calm and told mom how inappropriate that was. How mom hurt my fiancé terribly by stepping over the one boundary she ever had. How did the fiancé lose all her trust in her mom after this? I then uninvited my mom, and we left. My fiancé only broke down at home. My mother's also been inconsolable since and called me dozens of times, but I haven't picked up yet. The fiancé feels unsafe about having the wedding if there is a chance that her father might show up. We might just cancel the whole thing. Update: I met my dad earlier. He's sorry for what my mom did and how he'd first pushed me to listen to her. I told him that this hurt my fiancé and that it was really up to her. Dad did offer to cover additional costs we might have now. Both siblings called individually to apologize to the fiancé as well. I don't know what to make of it just now. I think it's a good start. I haven't talked to mom, though. Also, my fiancé's sister had a good idea regarding the wedding. We might do it earlier. That way, we'd at least keep the venue. We're still figuring out the details, but it might work. Update 2. We are married. In the end, my wife's sister and brother-in-law saved the day. Originally, the wedding was on the 18th at brother-in-law's restaurant. That was the date and place where we went from friends to dating 5 years ago. On the day of the op, the wife went to see her sister. They suggested having the wedding a week earlier, on the 11th. It felt like the best option. Brother-in-law was willing to do the work because their wife is like his sister. His team and he got a generous tip from my dad. My wife, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and I told all the guests to save my family from the date change. Wife didn't want to tell people why. Amazingly, everyone made it work except for 3 people. My family was told the morning of the wedding to make sure my wife's father would not have time to come to the wedding, as he lives 15 hours away from us. My family didn't complain because they knew that they messed up. It was all a bit stressful, but my wife felt like a spy on a mission and had fun with it. I was glad to see her get excited again. And mom finally listened. There was no sign of her father at the wedding. In the week before the wedding, we met my family to talk several times. These were long talks. Why my mom did it? She just thought she knew better. No excuse other than arrogance. They all apologized. My wife said one family torn apart by her father's actions was enough. She insisted that they were invited. So that was that. However, we clarified that contact with her father would be punished much harder in the future, especially regarding children. It's forgiven but not forgotten, I guess. What is your most memorable I don't get paid enough for this moment? I used to be an insurance adjuster for Progressive. I was on a catastrophe team in Florida, which is basically, adjusters from all over the country descend where a natural disaster happens and we crack out checks and try to get claims resolved as soon as possible. I was assigned to northern and central Florida. I had gone to see this guy about his hurricane-ravaged truck. It was totaled. He had a bunch of aftermarket parts on it, so I called the dealer who did the work for receipt, or some sort of record of parts cost. On the phone with the dealer, they say, "Oh, his truck is working? He blew out the transmission trying to tow a heavy boat a month ago." Basically, he towed his vehicle into what he thought the path of the hurricane would be and then filed an insurance claim. So, Progressive makes us go out with laptops and cars and resolve claims on the spot. I tell this guy that I have to do more investigating, and that I can't cut him a check right now. He's pissed. I apologize and say that I can get back to him in 24 hours. I go back in my progressive Ford Escape and start typing up notes and stuff on what I had just heard, when I hear a slamming on the hood. It's the angry insurance scammer guy. He's yelling at me. I locked the doors and turned on the engine to leave. He jumps on the hood. Well, guess I'm not going anywhere. He's unzipping his pants and urinating on the windshield of the car. I called my catastrophe manager, who is laughing at me. He turns around, and I think he's done. Nope. He drops his pants and takes a crap on the windshield. In the Florida sun, that starts seeping into the vents. I took it and got it washed, twice, but the stink would not leave. I eventually had to drive down to Tampa to swap the vehicle out. Me and my friends ran an illegal adult films bussiness in middle school, and it later turned into our career. My best friend, at 11 years old, found out that the dumpster behind the video store had a lot of sample adult films tapes. Basically, it was like the best parts of 4PRNS clipped down and put into one VHS to try to sell those adult films videos to the store, and then it would have this as a sample copy flashing on the screen, but like, you still got hardcore intimacy and all the bits, which for an 11-yo was way more than we could handle anyhow. We would sneak up there in the middle of the night and steal a bunch of the adult films tapes and sell them for like 5 to 10 a piece. We made several $100s. I built a PC and put a CD burner in it with my share of the money. It might have also paid for a bike, but I might have mowed lawns for that. I forget which year that happened in and if they were the same summer. Not in school, but yeah, I was distributing hardcore adult films to a bunch of 11-year-olds. The ring got busted and my friend got his beat when he fell asleep with the VHS in his TV that rewinds and plays it automatically. His mom came to wake him up and there's hardcore adult films. He had to unveil his stash space. Guy kept his mouth shut though. Didn't rat me out, said it was just for him. Didn't tell her it was a business we were running. We had a history of that. One summer when we were like 6, we started freezing soda in ice cube trays cause it was yummy and made our extremely meager soda allowance last much longer while we were playing Sega. Well, some kids around the neighborhood wanted some, but we didn't really want to give them up. We decided to sell them for a quarter, but all our soda pops got bought up. But we also had enough money for several 2 liters. Well, the next day we made a bunch more and kids were rabid for them, did 2 batches of every ice cube tray we had, upped it to 0.50 a cube. Next day we went $1 a cube with special mixes. 1.50 for a surge cube, enough to buy an entire 2-liter bottle at the time. Well, by the time parents were getting home from work our racket got shut down. Parents were pissed we made bank, certainly over $100 on the 3-day racket. As kindergarten-age kids. The parents wanted the money back, but we said we spent it all. We were big effing liars. I mean, we had plans for all the money, sure, and we spent a lot of it, especially on some prostitutes and hookers. We also had huge bags of soda and chips stuffed in a stairwell where our parents wouldn't find it. When we grew up though, we decided to do this full time and named it after my partner Tony Brazer.
When did you have to be honest to your obese friend? I told my obese best friend that I physically cannot eat as much as her. I, 33F, and my best friend, 31F, are extremely close since childhood. We've been through our whole lives together, and she is the closest, most important friend in my life. We get along wonderfully, that is, except one weird thing. For context, I am taller, and have always been naturally slim, while she is short, was naturally thick and gradually became obese during our 20s. Coming back to the weird thing, she has a habit of forcing food on me when she is hungry or wants a snack. For example, when we hang out, she will keep filling my plate even though I tell her that I am full. She will keep opening snacks and then telling me to take some repeatedly. She will fill me a glass of soda when I clearly say I don't want it. But, she wants more food, snacks or drinks, so she will take some for her and force some on me as well. In the past 25 years of friendship I have said nothing of this, and I generally manage to go around it. I don't know why she does this, but I have always thought she feels better if she is not eating alone. Strange habit. Fast forward this weekend, we hung out at her house for a few hours, just the 2 of us. The whole time she was commenting how I am drinking slowly, 1 glass of wine in the time period she drank 3, and not eating anything. There was only potato chips and similar snacks. In the end, she took out large ice creams, and while I said I didn't want ice cream, she opened both and passed one to me. I then said, "Girl, you don't seem to understand that I physically cannot eat as much as you. Thank you, but I am really full from my lunch. The glass of wine is enough for me." She got mad. She said I insulted her, and that she is offering out of politeness. She is still passive-aggressive towards me. Both her husband and mine think I was harsh on her, and throwing my thin body in her face. That was not my intention at all, and I would never intentionally hurt her. I apologized for hurting her feelings. How could I have communicated this better? My daughter refused to go to school after she got pregnant because she wanted to be a som forever. Now, she's livid because I refused to let her use her college fund for the baby. I'm a mother to a 19-year-old girl. I had my daughter very young, and I don't regret it, but I would never encourage it due to how hard it was. I had little to no support, and I would never wish the pain I went through on anyone. My daughter's father passed when I was pregnant, and she has no stepfather. It has always just been the 2 of us. I was kicked out of my home the second my family found out that I was pregnant, no questions asked, and we haven't been in contact since then. I've since moved halfway across the country. My daughter has been dating her boyfriend for roughly 4 years now. Her boyfriend is the same age as her and not a bad kid, but he is still a child in my eyes. They both are. Her boyfriend still lives with his parents and refuses to go to college. My daughter wanted to be a nurse but is now deciding she won't pursue a career because she wants to be a som forever. She would have been attending school this fall but chose to unenroll before it began. When my daughter came to me 2 weeks ago telling me that she was 2 months pregnant, I sat her down. I did not want her to go through the same things I went through. I asked her how this happened, and she said it had been planned. She and her boyfriend mutually decided that they wanted to be parents, and this horrified me because she knows all about the struggle we went through together and that I went through alone. I regretted calling her stupid and was upset, but I told her we could work together. Since she decided to keep this baby, I gave her stricter rules, told her how it works, what would change, and told her that she would be getting an education under my roof. These terms are non-negotiable. My daughter did not like these terms. She fully expected me to allow her boyfriend to move in, who is unemployed, give her college fund as money to spend on the baby, the two of them as a couple, and whatever else she wants, not pursue an education, and still go out whenever she wanted. I told her I would watch her baby at school and for a few hours daily when she did homework. I also said I would watch her baby on Saturdays and Saturdays alone so she could still have fun and be a teenager. I wish I were given one day out of the week to recharge, take a break from being a mom, and enjoy my childhood. I know that this is very lenient, but I love my daughter. We argued almost every day since, and my daughter's demands have gotten out of hand. She claims that they're very unfair, and I told her to look up what teen pregnancy is like and what motherhood is all about because the conditions and rules that I gave her are very, very lax. I told her that if she did not abide by these rules, she'd have to live with her boyfriend's family. She cried and yelled at me, but I put my foot down. She ended up moving out 3 days ago. I've texted her multiple times that if she changes her mind about the pregnancy or the rules, then she's more than welcome back home and that I will always love her no matter what she chooses. I also told her that she'll always be my baby girl and that I didn't want her to go, but we have no space for a full family, and being a mother means that your entire life will change. My heart aches. Despite being so involved, I love my daughter and feel like I failed her as a mother. She knows all about safe intimacy, was never bullied, and we were best friends, and we do everything together. I never thought this would happen. She had no better reason to get pregnant than I wanted to be a mom, and I'm ready, but she isn't thinking about what a mother does. I know I made single motherhood look easy, but it never was. I worked 2 to 3 jobs most of my life and didn't eat on some days, so my daughter never went hungry and always had nice clothes. I only finally got a real job as a nurse 2 years ago after being in and out of school for over a decade. Am I the a-hole for kicking her out? I thought this was the best way to teach her that things will change. I want her to come home, but if she won't accept these new rules and understands that motherhood is not easy, I can't let her back in willingly. I feel like such an a-hole.
Today I effed up by getting shot by the Filipino military. This happened about 10 years ago. At the time we lived on an island in the southern Philippines. A couple of friends of ours invited us to sail together down to a more remote island and have a barbecue and some drinks. We sailed our little sailboat and they sailed their catamaran. As they were a new couple we decided to book some accommodation on the island so they could have some alone time together, and to be frank we didn't want to hear their antics. The afternoon progressed nicely, a lot of food was consumed and way too much alcohol. After sunset we decided to head off to our resort and leave the 2 lovebirds alone. My wife asked if I was okay and can I find the resort as it was pitch black and no moon. Completely inebriated I of course puffed out my chest and slurred of course. Off we went into the pitch black and as you guessed we were completely lost. After about an hour I could see some distant lights and headed for them. Next thing we know a spotlight was trained on us and excited shouting came from what we assumed was the shore. My Tagalog is rudimentary at best and nothing I shouted back seemed to de-escalate the excitement. Next thing I know they opened fire and as you can imagine I'm SH'ing myself and my wife is crying. Thankfully the shooting stopped and a patrol boat headed out to us. Unbeknownst to us we had ventured into a protected marine area outside a naval base. We were roundly scolded and sent on our way. The only problem is we had no idea where we were, where the resort was or where our friend's boat was. After a few more hours we chanced on their boat, woke them up, kept drinking and told them of our adventure. To this day my wife is very wary of sailing with me. Somewhere in this world, there is a 26-year-old with a debilitating fear of birds. And I'd do it all again. In high school, I was a counselor at a summer camp for elementary school kids. One day, about 4 days into camp, a kid of about 8 walked up to me holding a huge feather, like from a hawk or something. He was all excited and proud, but for some reason, my immediate reaction was to go, "Oh, no. Where did you find that? That's a feather from the yellow-bellied lake loon. Oh, man, does this mean it's back?" Now, the kid, for this part was immediately skeptical. It's just a feather from a big bird." Well, at that moment, my buddy Derek walked up, oblivious to the situation. The kid shows him the feather, and, for reasons known only to Jeebus, says, "Oh, no. Where did you find that? Like, just absolutely amazing." The kid absolutely freaks, drops the feather and runs off. I fill Derek in on what happened, and we laugh about it, thinking it's over. Later, we're in the dorms, and the kid walks up with a few older kids, demanding we tell them about the loon. We concoct this story of a giant, yellow-bellied lake loon that was notorious for stealing campers from the lake shore, and sometimes their bunks. Another counselor, Daniel, is working behind the dorms and hears our tale. The older kids don't believe it, and question him about it as they go outside. Having heard the legend of the loon without their knowledge, he confirms every grisly detail, thereby sealing it as fact. Before supper, It had spread throughout the camp, all through the boys' and girls' dorms. Amazingness. Kids would take turns keeping lookout during swim time, and it became an easy way to scare them into submission at bedtime. Well, we keep this going until there are 3 days left in camp. Another counselor, Jeremy, had to be back at his summer job early the next morning, so we hatched a plan. I left and drove to my parents', about an hour away, and retrieved this ginormous stuffed lobster I had won at the fair. Going MacGyver with sheets, the lobster and costume stuff from the camp, we dressed me up like a giant yellow-bellied lake loon. At around 5 the next morning, when Jeremy had to leave camp, I burst into the boys' dorm, cawing and flapping my wings. I attacked Jeremy in his bed, dragging him out of the dorm, him screaming all the while. There was pandemonium. Kids were screaming, crying, terrified. Meanwhile, Jeremy got into his car and drove home, never to be seen by the campers again. We got most of them settled down, but not all. About 6 kids were so freaked, their parents came and scooped them early. We never admitted to the parents that we knew anything about it, and never assured the campers that it was just a prank and that Jeremy was alright. Update: am I the a-hole for telling my husband he's being a bad father? Ashley decided she wanted to stay at her mom's house last night, which I totally understood. Her mom also kept Hannah overnight for me so that Jack and I could talk about what happened with Ashley without either of the girls overhearing anything. I showed my husband this post and he cried reading through everyone's responses. He's opened his eyes to seeing that the favoritism is obvious to not only the girls but to everyone else. We talked about therapy and he's agreed to go. We found a place that will actually do a family therapy where Jack, myself, and Ashley's mom can have sessions together, and we can have the girls go as well but individually with just them and the therapist to talk. Blended families aren't always easy to navigate, and we want both the girls to also receive the benefits of having someone outside the family unit to confide in. This morning my husband decided he wanted to call Ashley to apologize. I told him it really should be done in person to seem genuine, and he should call her first and be prepared if she's not ready to talk to him yet and if she doesn't want to accept his apology at this time. This way Ashley can decide when she's ready to speak to someone who's hurt her feelings. Once Ashley is out of school he will call her and see if she'd like to hear his apology. If she does and accepts his apology, we'll be watching her performance recording. Jack is also going to be apologizing to her mom for the comment that was made and ask if she'd like to do more family outings or dinners with us. He thinks it'll be good for Ashley to also see them getting along, which I think is a great idea.
My unhinged neighbor blew up at me because I want to monopolize my husband. Now, she demands that I accept her apology because she misses my husband. My husband and I moved into our house 3 years ago and instantly became very close friends with the neighbors that we share a backyard fence with. I have observed that Mary has been very sweet with my husband, and I don't want to assume, but she wears strong fragrances when my husband is around. She always asks where my husband is and she gives him home-cooked meals every single day. I told my husband this and he told me that he does feel the same, so we agreed that he would keep some distance. Long story short, Mary blew up at me because she learned that I wanted to monopolize my husband. She called me a bunch of stuff I can never forgive, including useless cunt, and also made it clear she is into my husband. The day after, she sent me an apology text which was a non-apology saying, "I meant what I said but I shouldn't have said it." She asked if we could still be friends, but I declined and she blew up on me again. A few months after our friendship ended, she blew up her own life and left her husband and kids. I had heard they may be trying to get back together but didn't concern myself with their life. My husband has kept a larger distance but still hangs out with the husband once in a while, a beer here and there, and some projects together in the garage. So, this takes us to the issue. Yesterday, my husband went over there for a beer. I told him to have fun. An hour later I get a text from the wife. It says, "I know I said rude things to you in the past, but I was wondering if I could apologize to you in person. Let me know when you're free to meet." This isn't rocket science. I knew right away that she needed something. Turns out that she misses being able to hang with my husband. Maybe she wants her old life back. My husband came back and I said, "Let me guess, wife is there?" He confirmed she was and that they are back together, and that she was pissed off that she couldn't hang in the garage with them. Could she be more obvious? Anyway, I don't owe her my time. I have zero interest in giving her space in my life, and even if I was interested, I can't trust her, so I did not reply. However, now that spring is here, she eventually sees me in my yard try to have this conversation with me in person. She was going on and on about now that she had apologized, I should be able to get over it because we are neighbors. I told her, "I don't have to accept your apology just because you're desperate to F my husband. Now stop harassing us or I'll get the police involved." She was pissed and tried to grab me, but thankfully, my husband saw her and immediately called her out. She changed from a wild dog to a scared pup. She told my husband that she had done nothing wrong and that it was me who was being a prick for not accepting her apology. My husband told her, "While I appreciate your apology after you came on to me and the way you treated my wife, we do not want a friendship or any sort of relationship with you. Please stay away from my family. Do not text us. Do not call us. Stay far away from us." She was crying at this point and said that she didn't care if I didn't take her apology. She just wanted her relationship with my husband to return, to which my husband told her to screw herself. We went inside and called her husband to take her home.
Ex-wife wants her unicorn back? Just wait till Moose gets his back shots in. I met my buddy Pat in the early 90s when I was a sophomore in high school. He was a Nam vet, living in a dilapidated old apartment in a crummy small town on Florida's west coast. The units were pretty run down, with cars, young barefooted ill-watched children running about, and the various kind of yard detritus one might suspect. I guess he'd taken a shine to me because I was intrigued by him working on various cars, boats, and the fact that he'd sneak my 16-year-old self beers, just to have someone to chat with. Also, Pat was in the midst of a nasty divorce. Sometimes these things happen when you decide to cohabitate with a drinking waitress 20 years younger, but such is life. She'd taken him for nearly everything, which wasn't much to begin with, leaving Pat almost completely broken-hearted. Almost, because she left him Moose, a white poodle-ish dog of questionable lineage. Moose was great. Pat would take him to bars, dye him green for St. Patrick's Day, and they were always inseparable. If Pat was working on a derelict boat while sucking down a Parliament and mainlining Busch Light in the 90-degree heat, Moose was right there with him, all day long. About 3 months after the divorce, Pat's ex called, demanding the return of a beloved childhood stuffed animal, a small unicorn. Evidently, her father had given it to her, he'd recently passed, and she realized it was the only remaining item she'd forgotten to abscond with. I'm sitting there witnessing the phone conversation, wondering what the hell she's freaking about, when Pat closes the call with, "Fine, you worthless woman. I'm going out of town but we'll be back in a month, you can collect your effing unicorn then." Slam. Pat looked at me and a devilish smile crossed his cropped teeth. After explaining the call, he leaves the kitchen to fish through some dusty closet boxes and retrieves the plushy unicorn, Moose. He calls, and Moose comes running, per command. Eyes wide and tail wagging, Moose sits and awaits master's command. "Moose, here's your unicorn." And Pat tosses it down to the runt dog, who eyes it for a moment. It may be fair to mention at this point that Moose is not neutered. He then proceeds to doggy F the ever-living hell out of that unicorn like the antidote was lodged somewhere in its fluffy soul. Word travels fast in shoddy communities and soon "Moose, go get your unicorn" was the favored saying. Damn near everyone would pass by and mutter those words, only to have the poodle run inside, get the stuffed love toy, and proceed to befoul that thing like nobody's business. A month passes and poor unicorn was looking haggard, missing an eye, and all dignity. Jerk drinking waitress finally pulls up one muggy Florida day in her Chevy Celebrity to collect her prized possession. After some unpleasant words exchanged, she demands her unicorn. A small crowd had gathered and Pat's moment had arrived. Finally, after losing everything, it was time to mutter the sweetest words of redemption I'd ever previously, or ever will hear again. "Moose, go get your unicorn." I lied about having SA and ADHD to justify my bad decisions.
I, a 16-year-old male, recently went through a breakup after being in a relationship for almost 3 years.
I deeply hurt my ex-girlfriend, and I want to acknowledge that the pain I caused her was much more significant than I initially realized. While I didn't physically harm her, I inflicted severe mental and emotional damage through my actions. Our relationship was built on a foundation of lies from my side, and the guilt I feel has been eating me alive since the beginning. When we first started dating, I mentioned to her that I suspected I had ADHD, but my parents were unaware, and my aunt arranged for me to get diagnosed. Initially, it was some sort of sick joke, a way to avoid admitting that I was undiagnosed but strongly believed I had it. However, as our relationship progressed and became more serious, I began using this lie as an excuse whenever I made mistakes. Admitting fault was difficult for me due to my stubborn nature, so having a shield like this, protecting me from facing the consequences, was oddly comforting. This is when things took a dark turn. As frustration and anger built up within me, often triggered by insignificant incidents like misplacing a few books in my school bag or accidentally damaging a frame I needed for a late homework assignment, I struggled to control my anger. Sometimes, my anger would escalate, which led to me getting physical with her. The frame incident was an example, as well as a time when I was in a vulnerable state, crying in a room full of people. It was partly her fault, but my actions were inexcusable. I want to make it clear that I never intended to cause physical harm, and all these aggressive thoughts and impulses occurred only in my mind. Within seconds, my anger would take over, and before I knew it, I had my hands on her. Additionally, I fabricated a past relationship, claiming that I had been sexually assaulted by the girl. I made up a story about meeting her and her friends in another country, being forced into substances and other inappropriate activities at the age of 12. This was a complete lie. In reality, our relationship was just an ordinary, cringeworthy teen romance with excessive heart and pleading emojis in every message. I deeply regret my actions, and I am fully aware that I will never be able to erase the guilt I feel. What I did was not only messed up but also inhumane and incredibly insensitive. I am seeking help because this is not something I can fix alone, nor is it something I fully understand. I want to understand the reasons behind my behavior, and I want to learn how to become a better person, ensuring that I never cause harm to another individual again. To anyone reading this, please learn from my mistakes. Never lie about having a disorder, regardless of whether you suspect you have it or not. And most importantly, never fabricate sensitive stories that people may be struggling with. I understand that I need professional help, and I am currently taking steps to seek it. Do not take anyone for granted, and never continue a lie about anything. Honesty is essential, and living a life built on lies will only hinder your progress. I have learned this lesson the hard way, and I hope others can learn from my experiences too. My girl best friend wants to sleep with me and now I don't know what to do about it. I have been best friends with Carly for 7 years. We went to college together and now I am torn between protecting that friendship and sleeping with her. We talk about everything and we share everything as well and I can't imagine my life without her in it. Lately, I have been feeling like she is either crazy atrony generally or she is into me because of a few things she has said and done. Not only does she keep telling me how atrony she is all the time, But when we went out with friends to a baseball game, she kept talking about intimacy and how she wanted to go back to my house and watch movies in bed. Granted, we were all drinking, but she wouldn't let it go. So, we dropped our friends off and went to go and get food. I hoped that would satisfy some of her hunger, but it didn't, and as much as I find her attractive, I have never considered a romantic relationship with her because the risk may not be worth the reward in the cold light of day. I offered to drive her home, hoping that her parents would be in and act as a PP block until I decided on my next stage of play, but they were out at a party. I couldn't see a way out without causing offense or suspicion, so I agreed to go inside. I follow her upstairs to her room. As I watch her move, the male inside of me feels an urge to press her against the wall and go for it. But, I kept a respectful distance and reminded myself that she was my friend and for years that I had never fancied her and therefore there was no reason to now. I went to take my usual spot on her armchair and she told me to come and lie down in bed with her, which was a first. I did as she asked, trying so hard to keep my hands to myself. As we lay there watching a movie, she joked about wanting to sleep with me and I laughed it off because this whole situation is blowing past friendship. After the movie came to an end, I made my excuses and got out of there. She texted me worried that she had upset me and she had been telling me she wanted me to sleep over if I wanted that as well. I want to know whether you guys think I should go for it and sleep with her and hope we can stay friends. Guys, is she crushing over me? Have you ever found out your partner's disturbing secret? I've been gaming with my girlfriend's ex-boyfriend for the past couple of months without realizing that the two of us had more in common than online games. We teamed up on a regular basis to play Dead by Daylight, but failed to connect the dots until recently. We were talking about girlfriends and gaming when I mentioned that my girlfriend generally enjoyed gaming, but she hated playing first-person shooter games because she preferred to see the character she was controlling. My girlfriend's ex said he used to date a girl who hated first-person shooter games for the exact same reason, plus she usually struggled to aim at things that wanted to unalive her. I said my girlfriend struggled to aim at things that wanted to unalive her too. My girlfriend's ex laughed and asked if my girlfriend's name was Jessica perhaps. I confirmed that my girlfriend's name was indeed Jessica. My girlfriend's ex thought I was messing with him until I asked if Jessica's surname was Honkerson. My girlfriend's ex stopped concentrating on the game we were playing and said, "Jessica Pillow Princess Honkerson?" I said she's never been a pillow princess with me. My girlfriend's ex said give it time because the pillow princess came out of hibernation at the end of the honeymoon phase when he was dating Jess. He said Jessica was not only a pillow princess but also the reason all of his Dead by Daylight characters were beginner level because she managed to delete all the progress he made in the game when she got upset at him for having gamer girlfriends online. I asked my girlfriend's ex if that was the reason the two of them were no longer together. He said that was part of the reason, but the main reason was that she kidnapped his cat and took its life. Then she did the exact same thing with his dog. My first reaction was to laugh because I thought he was joking, but based on his silence, it quickly became clear to me that he was in fact not joking. I awkwardly apologized for laughing and waited for him to continue talking. He said Jessica never liked his cat because she was allergic to cats. She wanted him to find another home for the cat, but he refused to do that because he loved the cat too much. As for the dog, she was bit by a dog as a child and could not bear to be in the presence of one. My girlfriend's ex said nothing Jessica did made him abandon the cat, until he came home one day and realized that the cat was gone, which was not unusual at first, but the cat never returned. She ended up taking the dog to a field and taking its life with a firearm. She only confessed to both the acts when he said he was done with her, and her psycho part was kind of revealed. My girlfriend's ex pointed out that Jessica had a scar below her knee that kind of looked like a question mark or a hook. My girlfriend's ex asked if I knew how she got that scar. I said rock climbing accident from what I remembered Jess telling me. My girlfriend's ex laughed and said there were rocks all right before telling me that he had rough intimacy with Jessica on a rocky beach shortly after his cat went missing. He said her scar was the result of him hitting it from the back on the rocks and made a joke about how hard it was for her to be a pillow princess without a pillow. My girlfriend's ex encouraged me to password protect my gaming console, never leave my pets alone with Jessica, always wear a rubber, and run. I thanked him for the tips and made an excuse to exit our gaming session because I was feeling uncomfortable. I've never asked my girlfriend about her past relationships because I knew there would always be the risk of discovering something unpleasant and then I might feel differently about her. I still feel the same about my girlfriend, despite the unpleasant information her ex shared. I'm gonna choose to ignore what he said and have faith in her. Edit, she cheated on me. My wife wanted to kick out my 6-year-old nephew for wearing white at our wedding, so I told her that if she kicked my family out, I would happily leave too. My wife and I married last Wednesday, and the ceremony was impressive. My wife was very strict about the fact that no guest was allowed to wear white, which is understandable because, for females, that's considered rude or bad luck at weddings. The reception was going well until I noticed my wife walking over to the bathroom with her face in her hands. My wife was upset as we've been together for 3 years, and I can tell when she's upset. I rushed across the room, telling guests, 1 minute, as I hurried by them. Once I got to the bathroom, I knocked on the door and informed my wife that it was me at the door. After a few minutes, I heard the door unlock and open. When I got in, I saw my wife sitting on the floor with mascara running down her cheeks. I asked what was wrong, and she told me that one of our nephews was wearing white jeans and a white bow tie. I immediately thought she was utterly overreacting because he's a 6-year-old child and had no idea you can't wear white to a wedding. I told her she was overreacting but in a much more excellent way, and I said that she should enjoy the reception and forget about the whole thing. She eventually texted her sister to come to the bathroom and fix her makeup so she could go back out and have a good night. After a while, I saw her talking to my sister, the mom of our nephew, and I thought she was just having a conversation. About an hour later, my sister pulled me aside and berated me for my wife's behavior. She said my wife had asked her and her son to leave unless she had a change of clothes for him. This was far from okay to me, so I asked my wife to talk and explained everything my sister told me. My wife said she was entirely in the right for what she asked, and I told her that if she kicked my family out, Then I would happily leave too. My wife started crying again and saying that this was her day and she didn't want it to be ruined by our nephew. This angered me because I had enough of her ruining our day over something silly. I then said she was not only selfish but that she was insanely insecure if she was worried about a 6-year-old looking better than her. My wife's been staying with her mother since the wedding, and we haven't spoken once. Her mom contacted me this morning and said I must apologize for being out of line. I don't believe I'm wrong here, so what do you think? How have you stabbed your friend in the back? I was at a friend's birthday party. My friend was in her mid-20s. I was 30. Her mom was in her early 50s. She and her mom took really good care of me after my father passed. They made sure I was eating and that I actually left the apartment every day, as I was prone to just sit around being a depressed sad sack. Friend's mom and I used to get intoxicated together. So when we were at her daughter's birthday party at her mom's house, she called me to her room so we could smoke. She didn't want to do it in front of everyone, and it definitely wasn't the first time we've reached cloud 9 together. So it was somewhat familiar territory. Maybe it was the grass, or the wine, or both, but as we're smoking and chatting, I just leaned in and kissed her. To my surprise, she kissed me back, and we proceeded to make out like a couple of frisky teenagers on the love seat in her bedroom. She stopped for a moment, looked at me and said, "Well, had I known you were interested we could have done this a long time ago." We made out a little more, and I told her that we should stop because we're going to get caught. So we kissed and touched one another a little more, and returned to the party. The next day she stopped by my apartment to see how I was doing, which wasn't uncommon. That day was slightly different. She was always a very good-looking woman, but that day she had more carefully applied makeup, some nice-looking earrings and a blouse that showed off more of her chest than usual. I invited her in and we were off to the races. I quickly found out an experienced woman really knows her stuff in the bedroom. We both had a great time, but I thought of my friend and said that we probably shouldn't do this again. She didn't really respond to it and we continued to cuddle for a while. The next day she called me and said that she thought she may have lost her earring on my bed or my couch, which I thought was cap, but it turns out that the earring was indeed in between the cushions of my couch. She came over to retrieve it and we went at it again. And again, and again. This went on for months until I finally was moving out of state. It never happened again, we never spoke of it, and my friend never found out. Sadly, my friend's mom passed away 5 years ago. I'd thought about telling her but it just seemed like a bad idea. I still rub one out to her sometimes as I recorded us doing it without her knowledge sometimes. Those videos are a prized possession. Am I the jerk for uninviting my daughter to our Christmas gathering? I am a mother of 4 children, 2 older sons and 2 younger daughters. All of them are adults and have moved out a long time ago. I have always been close with my daughter Sally, while Penny has always liked to have her own space, which I don't mind. They're both beautiful talented young women that I thought I couldn't be more proud of. We're having early Christmas this year. First week of December I was inviting everyone around for Christmas dinner, gift giving and the lot. When I phoned Penny yesterday to clarify a few things she mentioned that she and her husband would not be coming. When I asked she said that they had separated for now as he had cheated. I said that it was surely better to spend time with family if this was the case and maybe she should come home for some time. She hummed and awed but then eventually she told me he had an affair with Sally and they had been seeing each other for the past 2 years. I felt sick. For the past 6 months in our talks, Sally has alluded that she had been seeing someone and was typically girl in love. I uninvited Sally to the Christmas gathering and blocked her. I don't know if I'm able to deal with her before Christmas but this is family time and family can't hurt each other like that. I'm at a loss in all honesty. Penny is now coming which is good because at this time she needs stability from people who love her in my opinion. The problem is that Sally naturally thinks I'm in the wrong. It's none of my business and as her mother I can't block her and remove her from the family. My sister thinks I shouldn't get involved in their personal lives which I think is idiotic. My daughter needs us right now. But then she tells me I have 2 daughters to think about, which I think isn't true. Sally has forfeited that right at the moment. Thankfully my husband is liaising with Sally at the moment but he is also in solidarity with me. So are we in the wrong for uninviting a daughter for Christmas? Edit. My husband showed me that this had gotten a lot of responses. Too many for us to answer them all but we will be reading through before bed. A small update. Penny's mill found out. While me and her have only spoken a few times, she did dote on Penny and I know Penny got along well with her. I haven't spoken to her personally, but I know she phoned my daughter and was really supportive and crying. My sister said that if Sally isn't invited then she isn't going either, which is fine by me. She wasn't invited in the first place due to the pandemic. Otherwise I've been working and doing some crochet so it's been quiet. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that I hate our Holocaust survivor grandfather? He was a piece of crap. My grandfather David was born in 1927. He was Roma and by the time he was 17 he already had 1 son, Levi. His wife was pregnant when she got captured but my grandfather managed to escape with Levi. By 1950, my grandfather and Levi immigrated to Canada where he completely Canadianized them down to changing names and everything to blend in. My grandfather and my uncle have had issues my entire life and it stretched all the way back to when they first moved. By the time my uncle was 16, he actually left and moved all the way to Toronto. In 1976, my grandfather married my grandmother Mary, who was born in 1946. They met because her dad was a Holocaust survivor and a friend of my grandfather. My mom Anna was born 10 years later and I was born when my mom was 20. Throughout my entire life, my grandfather has been the worst possible person. He's never hit anybody, but he's yelled so much, always swore, broke dishes, even punched a hole in a wall once when he was arguing with my dad. He'd call me a B-word cause my mom and dad weren't married when they had me and always insulted my dad. The worst of it though is that he always drank and whenever he would drink he would rant to my mom about how Levi was so much better than her and how he wished he'd had the baby that died with his first wife instead. But my mom loved him and just said none of us understood him. He died 2 months earlier and it was a slow decline, but I guess he knew he was going because a few days before he went, he had their last talk when my mom and I visited in the hospital. He told my mom how much he loved her, how she was the only good thing in his life and how her being happy made his life worth it. The last thing he said to me was he'd see me in the next life. After he died, my uncle came into our lives, and even though he looks so much like my grandfather, he's so different. He's happy. Doesn't drink, and it's honestly like he feels like what a grandfather should be. Because he got married late, I finally have cousins my age. The only thing he doesn't do is talk about my grandfather to anyone except mom. Last night, we were all over and my mom brought up my grandfather. She started sharing her favorite memories of him because she misses him. She asked me and I honestly don't have any, and that started an argument between us because she said he only acted how he did because of what he went through. I yelled at her that I don't have any good memories and I don't care that he was in the Holocaust because he was always a jerk to us. That made my mom cry and leave, and my uncle told me that he's felt how I do his entire life, but I can't let it hurt my mom. Was I the asshole? Am I the jerk for telling my mom that I hate our Holocaust survivor grandfather? My dad came home the day after and he got really upset with me because my mom was inconsolable. He told me about how we can't judge my grandfather like we could somebody else who acted like him who hadn't gone through what he'd been through. He told me how my grandfather had never said a nice thing about him, but he still loved him because he wouldn't have had my mom without him needing to survive. He told me that I need to see the good that comes from everything. I didn't really know what to say, but Uncle Levi was still over, so he talked to me and mom. He told me how relatives who survived the war or were living in different countries always talked about my grandfather like a different person than he knew. Like he loved motorcycles, wanted to be a mechanic and wanted to see the pyramids and was always doing things to make his first wife happy. But Levi told me that he really only remembers my grandfather from when they moved to a city called Stanislav. He told me that he can barely speak the Sint language because he remembers how much my grandfather pushed for them to assimilate and learn Ukrainian even though he was little, but they faced a lot of discrimination there too. According to him, that's what really broke my grandfather because it was like they still hate us even after what they did to us. So when they moved to Canada was when he really changed, and Levi said he always regrets leaving because it gave him issues that made him put his own life on hold, to the point where he only had kids because somehow he married a woman in her 40s who was able to. It seemed like he was joking about that. He said that my grandfather acted that way because he thought it was better to push people away so that when he was gone, people wouldn't miss him like the way he missed his own parents and first wife. My mom then tried to remind me of things that my grandfather did for me, like he'd always go and buy me X-Men comics and movies because Magneto was the only real superhero, and how he'd always drive me to school, how he'd use his pension to buy me things. And I had honestly forgotten or just stopped thinking about a lot of that. She insisted that he did love me even if he didn't show it. I don't really know what to feel, but I didn't want to make my mom sad, and maybe Uncle Levi is right about why he was so mean, and maybe my dad is right about there being good in everything. So I said sorry and I told my mom that I won't act like that again. She hugged me and gave me a lot of kisses on the forehead, so I think we're cool now because she's been happier these last 2 weeks.
My husband told me that his ex is Camilla and I am Diana, but my family confessed that I am in an arranged marriage, and I learned there's more to this royal drama. I noticed on social media that there are always likes from a teenage boy on posts that he puts up about me. I thought it was a bit weird that he was friends with a teenager, so I looked through the photos I could see on his profile. There are a few with my husband from about 8 to 10 years ago and another woman. When I asked my husband, he said he was his ex-girlfriend's son. He explained that they were very serious but that she had ended up getting married to someone else. This seemed odd, so I asked my mother-in-law about her the next time I saw her. My mother-in-law rolled her eyes and said, "Don't mention Val. I'm so glad you came along because that girl was bad for him. She was unemployed, a single mother, and just very trashy. We never would have accepted her. I am very successful career-wise and well-established. My family is very prominent and well-regarded in the community." The more I thought about it, the more it felt like my background had more to do with things than anything. I asked my husband about Val again and asked if he would have married her if not for his family. He said that one of the biggest reasons she chose someone else was because his family refused to accept her. When I asked what was different about me, he responded, "She was Camilla, and you're Diana." I asked if that meant he would marry her if anything happened to me. He shook his head, laughed, and said I was being ridiculous, and that he didn't think like that. I told him I wanted him to remove and block his ex and her son from his social media immediately and to stop communicating with them. He's told me he has a cordial relationship with them and doesn't feel it's fair of me to ask him to cut them out. I'm losing sleep because I feel like a placeholder who is there to please his family and that he'll return to her once his parents are gone. I'm starting to doubt every interaction I ever had with him. When I bring it up to him, he gets upset and tells me to stop dwelling on his past. I wish I'd never known this because my happiness has been drained. So I sat down with my husband and told him that this whole Val thing was bothering me, that I'd never heard her name before for someone he held in such high regard. He explained that she had cheated on him and had married the guy she cheated with. They stopped speaking for a while, but they started being cordial again as she was having problems in her marriage and through her divorce. He swears in his life that there's only friendship there, that he can't ever forgive her, and that he has no interest in her romantically anymore. I was over at my parents' house telling my mother about Val. She kept telling me not to worry, that everyone has a past, and that he chose me. Dad overheard Mom and me and came into the kitchen. "Are you serious right now? Is he talking to Val again? I'm going to unalive him." I asked my father how he knew about Val. I looked at my mother, and she looked at him with a horrified look. He said he overheard us, and it's not right for him to talk to other women. They tried to talk around it, but I demanded an answer and they finally relented. My mother admitted that they had arranged my marriage. We'd been seeing each other for a month and I met his parents. Shortly after, his mother called me and explained about Val, how they feared he would return to her, and how they wanted to do everything they could to ensure their son married the right girl. I asked my mother why she agreed, and she admitted that they were afraid I was gay and that I wouldn't ever have children. She said that's why my husband was immediately invited to every holiday. That's why he was introduced to multiple relatives in a very short time. That's why they referred to him as family before he proposed. They were trying to set the tone in my mind. My head was spinning. I told them I had to go and couldn't talk to them anymore. I drove home and felt like I couldn't breathe. I walked into our house and told my husband everything. He laughed. He said he'd figured it out a while ago and thought I had too. He told me that his parents paid for me to go on vacation with them. They made a point of getting everyone in the family to share how much they liked me. They gave him extra gift certificates to take me out to dinner and other events. His mother cleaned his apartment and did all of his laundries while he was at work. Hence, his nights and weekends were free for me. When he said he was going to save the money for a ring, they gave it to him, and they kept telling him what a good match I was for him. While we were engaged, he asked his parents if it had been the plan to keep him away from Val, and his mother admitted that it had been. He told me that he fell in love with me while we were together. What he feels for me is real, and that he loves our life together. He said it doesn't matter how it started because what we have is strong and real. I don't know how I feel. I can't even talk to anyone because I'm the only person who didn't know this happened. I feel like such an idiot. I am furious with his parents for doing this, furious with mine for going along with it, and hurt that he didn't tell me the truth once he figured it out. I do not know if I want a divorce. My husband has been trying very hard to be supportive of me. I've told him I don't feel like talking. He keeps asking me if he can get me anything and asking me little questions to get me to talk, but I can't even get my feelings straight right now. I feel betrayed by every person who is supposed to care about me. I have no idea what to do now.
My boyfriend might be charged for possession of child intimate videos. Me and my boyfriend have been together for nearly 6 years. We share a flat together. We just got engaged this year, and now there's a huge legal situation that might flip my life upside down once again. About a year ago, we had police turn up at our door to talk to my boyfriend. I wasn't home, so everything I know about the situation is hearsay. Apparently, in 2019, my boyfriend's smartphone was caught downloading or accessing child pornography that was under some kind of surveillance. They seized all of his devices and have confirmed their suspicion that his smartphone was the device used. Despite this, they didn't have enough evidence to charge him at the time, and he was let go. He strongly denies the accusations, and it has definitely caused him some serious distress. Since then, things went back to normal, but I was not entirely sure if I trusted his innocence. Perhaps he did it entirely by accident? He is a bit of a dunce sometimes when it comes to technology. I just rationalized it, and with the police seemingly giving up, it quelled any negative thoughts about it. Then, just yesterday, he gets a call from the police. They believe they now have enough evidence to charge him with possession of child intimate videos. He will be receiving a court summons soon in the mail with his court date. He has the option to contest the charge or plead, but he hasn't decided yet. He's never seemed like he's interested in kids. Nothing he's into intimately indicates that. I've never caught him looking at any intimate videos that isn't super vanilla normal stuff. He's certainly not the kind of person who knows how to navigate the dark web. Yet I'm still on the fence on whether I actually believe him, since I know that I'm biased because I love him. He hasn't admitted to anything since he got the call, and he still denies he did anything wrong. If he's charged in court, he'll undoubtedly be put on the Intimate Offenders Registry. He may be imprisoned. It'll probably be in local news. He'll definitely lose his job because the work he does might now pose a danger to children. If he fights it, there's probably going to be huge legal fees. I just got made redundant a few weeks ago. I'm completely broke. If he's jailed, I can't afford to keep my home by myself, and I will be homeless for the 4th time in my life. I really don't want to be known around my town as that one who got engaged to a child lover. I really don't like the possibility that people will think I knew he was a child lover the whole time. I really don't want it to be true, but even if it isn't and he still gets charged, it impacts me negatively in a lot of ways. He isn't the only one who's suffering over it. It's very distressing, and obviously since it's such a sensitive matter, I can't talk to anyone close to me about it without just spreading drama. I can only talk to my boyfriend about it. I have had an extremely difficult life, and I don't know if I have enough soul left to handle this situation alone. I don't know what to do or where to start. I am genuinely lost. If anyone has anything helpful to say or a similar experience to talk about, that would be very much appreciated. What are the cons of not having kids, in my experience? It's lonely. A lot of people assume if you don't have kids, you don't like them, don't want anything to do with them, and know nothing about them. I was the oldest of many kids and helped raise them. I understand what kids are like. I can entertain them and like to play games with them. I can feed and change babies. I can rock them to sleep. I understand they're likely to destroy things and make messes, whether intentionally or not. I have a box of toys and bubbles at my house in case of small visitors. I get that I will never understand what it's like to have a child, but I like to think I'm pretty accommodating. And yet many friends distance themselves because they don't want to bring their children to my house in fear of them wrecking it. Note, I'm not a fancy person and don't care anyway, and don't want me to see theirs because it's wrecked. They don't want to go out because it will be too stressful. When we finally do get together, I listen to their stories, but rarely get asked about my life because they're so consumed with parenting that's all they can focus on. It's hard to watch those friendships slip away, despite my best efforts. Yes, I have friends without children as well, It's just difficult once you get to a certain age as you're the minority. I wasn't criticizing my friends, as I understand the focus shifts. I was just sharing my reality.
What was the riskiest thing you did on a flight? During midterms for our spring semester, my boyfriend and I decided one thing. This summer we didn't care how much money it took or if we had to skip our last classes, we were going to travel and get fat from the greatest food and have the greatest SX. It sounds corny, I know y'all, but you don't understand. My boyfriend and I both come from strict religious families, so we dormed in college to escape our parents and finally get that chance to hopefully have a SX in our dorms. But we were low-key broke and couldn't afford to get single rooms. Our roommates never left or even caught on that we were trying to smash, but whatever. So our summer semester getaway was the plan. 4 months of non-stop lust and love. We packed our bags and we didn't even stop by back to our family's home. Screw that. My man carried all my bags and I bought our coffees. We had a long flight to Italy awaiting us. We boarded the plane just on time and that was it. Holy shit, we were actually off. It was the first time either of us had been on our own like that before. The clouds were so beautiful up top I could have literally touched them. I fall asleep for a bit and my boyfriend starts tapping. I jump, it looks like something's wrong. I'm short of breath and I'm like what? He leans into me and says, "Do you want to get wicked?" I start laughing. I'm like, who the hell says that? Why'd you wake me up? I see him check his jacket pocket and pull out this tiny little square. It looks like chocolate but there's little designs on them I couldn't make out. He leans in and asks me if I want one. I ask what it is. He says Tabs, SX chocolate. The way my heart dropped to my ass. Why the hell would you bring SX chocolate onto the plane? There's little people here. We're like 1,000 miles above ground. Then he looks at me and says, exactly, the hell are they gonna do? And you know what? He was right. What was anyone on the plane really gonna do? I said screw it and he gave me my dedicated half of the chocolate with him. It was surprisingly good. I was expecting this knockoff kind of Hershey's you get on Halloween, but that was S-tier quality. My boyfriend assured me that it didn't cost much and not to worry about it. We snuggled up real close to each other and watched a movie on his seat. And let me tell you ladies, when that shit hits you, I mean that shit hits you. I looked at him and was like, holy shit. I felt something in his pants stiffen. We put a blanket we had over us and undid our seatbelts just loose enough so we could pull them back on when the flight attendant walks by. We unzipped each other's pants and got straight to it. God damn it, bro, that was the riskiest shit I've ever done. There were so many sounds: food carts rolling, babies crying, footsteps, constant dings, and the occasional distant sound of the flight attendant. I wasn't sure of the SX laws in Italy, but I'm sure this was something we could have gotten into real trouble for. But God, did it feel good. I'm squirming in my seat thinking about it. After we both finished, we cleaned up in the airplane bathroom, and we had to wash our blankets when we got to our hotel. We had enough chocolates for the rest of our vacation, 10,000 tenths. We're already planning a trip for our winter break, even though we'll definitely go broke then. My boyfriend refuses to make me orgasm. What should I do? My boyfriend and I have been together for about 4 months now. Recently, we've been having arguments about his lack of effort both outside intimacy, like planning dates, for instance, and in the bedroom. My boyfriend is a bit inexperienced with relationships and intimacy in general, which is fine with me. I'm not the most experienced either. Before our relationship, he was with only one other person. They were long distance, and he never climaxed during anything they did. He only finished with his hand. Fast forward to our relationship and I did everything I could to get him to climax, and eventually, he did. But when we were discussing intimacy for the first time, we both mentioned how neither of us had been able to orgasm with another person. When I heard this, I wanted to see if I could get him there so he could see why everyone enjoyed intimacy so much, and now he can. But he never returned the favor. I absolutely believe intimacy should be a tit-for-tat relationship. If someone is going down on you or stimulating you in some way, you should return the favor to the extent of both your and your partner's comfort. The thing is, he has only injured me twice, and for a collective time of less than 4 minutes. I even asked him if he wanted me to help him learn and he just kind of mumbled and didn't say anything. We ended up just stopping and going to sleep. It's resulting in me being sexually frustrated and fuming every time we're finished because he's going to sleep peacefully. I'm still left unsatisfied. I brought this issue up both subtly and bluntly. Each time, he laughingly says, I know, but does nothing about it. As I mentioned above, there is a distinct lack of effort in most of his actions. I initiated the relationship, asking him to do most events, initiating intimacy, cooking together, and him staying over with me. From him, there is none of that, and this has been a source of argument for us for weeks. He has never asked me to go out to dinner with him, go see a movie, or go on a walk. I know he loves me. He says he is just bad at this sort of thing. But with the internet at his disposal, shouldn't he be trying to learn some things? Specifically how to make his partner orgasm? My lying husband has been sleeping with my mother for 22 years, so I'm going to destroy both of their lives. So I have been with my husband since we were 15. I got pregnant with his child at 17 and we moved in with my parents. I then gave birth to my now 22-year-old daughter. My husband and we went on to have 3 more kids, and I'm currently 7 months pregnant with my last child. I really thought I had a good marriage. We were intimate more than twice a week, we went on date nights, we bought each other gifts, We didn't fight. But my entire world was shattered on New Year's Eve when I returned early from a trip I had taken with some friends. I walked into my bedroom to find my mom having intimacy with my husband. My mother screamed at me to get out of their bedroom, which really shook me up even more. Unfortunately, my oldest daughter was also home in her bedroom across the house getting ready for a party. She ran out and witnessed my unclothed 68-year-old mother run out of our house and slam the door. My daughter was devastated and went to my sister's house. I asked her not to say anything until I first talked to my husband. I asked him for the truth. He told me that my mom seduced him when we were 18 and living in their house. They'd been having unprotected intimacy at least once a month for longer than we were married, which was for 22 years. I ran the math and was horrified, because the timeline meant my twin brothers and youngest brother could be my husband's children. I immediately called my dad and told him to come to my house without my mom. I made my husband confess and my dad was devastated. He and my mom were high school sweethearts too. Needless to say, we could hear my mother screaming from her house when he confronted her. My parents are our neighbors. I then told my older sister and she and I decided to have her throw a party for the whole extended family and we invited my ex's family as well. At the party, I had my eldest daughter take all the kids to our basement and put on a movie, leaving only the adult children and siblings, and I told them exactly what my mom and husband been doing. Most of the family is on my side, except my 3 youngest siblings, my twin sister and my ex's entire family. They all say I'm an a-hole for dropping this publicly. Word got out and my mom's best friend, who is on leadership at my mom's church, called me to verify. My mom has since been let go as the children's pastor there and she claims I've essentially ruined her reputation and life. My dad kicked her out and she's now living with my twin sister, and lastly, my dad insisted on a DNA test for the 3 youngest boys before he'd consider anything to do with their marriage. The twins are my husband's bio children. I've since kicked him out and he's living with his parents. My father and I are discussing me moving into his much larger house and him selling my grandfather's house and him giving me the money to buy a new house somewhere else to get rid of the memories. My husband is appalled and furious that I proved he actually is about to have 7 kids, instead of 5, that I'm going to be taking half his business away from him. My husband started his own HVAC company a few years back and for the first 5 years, I helped him get it set up, ran the office completely, and took time away from my teaching career to help him get this established. In my state, all marital assets, including businesses, are split 50-50. Since the house was still in my father's name, my husband will get no money from the sale, neither will my mother, since inherited assets are not subject to be split in divorces. My mother is also likely to not get any alimony, as our state is not a no-fault divorce state. I'm now over a month removed, still extremely bitter and angry at my mother, especially at her hypocrisy of calling me a WHRE and shaming my family, when she's done much worse. I also despise my ex with everything within me now, as he was doing both my mom and me minutes apart in some instances. He got my mother pregnant less than a week after getting me pregnant, and while I thought it was so cute and fun that I shared a pregnancy experience with my mom, she was carrying my children's half-siblings. He has broken all trust I had in men and being faithful. I have already procured a good lawyer from the firm that helped us in financial matters for both me and my dad is helping pay for it. As for how I had no idea this affair was ongoing, my husband confirmed to me that they would have intimacy at my mom's office, at church, in their cars, at a motel, and when we built the business, they started having it routinely in his office, once I went back to teaching. They also had it in our houses too when my father would go away on business trips or I'd be out of town. It was pure happenstance that I came home a day early from a trip, because I was uncomfortable from being nearly 7 months pregnant and just wanted my own bed, for me to find out. Knowing they'd be carrying on this full-blown affair still if I hadn't caught them is what I'm still upset about. The fact that the grandmother and father of my children cared so little about destroying our families is what I can't get past. What's hardest for me is that my own mother would do this to me and would continue to do this for years and not caring when it all blew up in her face that she would be destroying her entire family. Edit. Also, to add insult to injury, my husband confirmed in one of our mediated conversations the affair started when I apparently made him angry. He didn't tell me and instead vented to my mom when they were alone. She comforted him and they had intimacy. He loved it and then pursued her after that. He said he would have divorced me, but knew he'd get cut off from her and she was so much better at intimacy than me, so stuck it out with me. He told me I was a placeholder. Of all the betrayal and low blows, that statement is what keeps me up at night. My lying husband has been sleeping with my mother for 22 years, so I'm going to destroy both of their lives. So I had a phone conversation with my aunt a few days ago and she told me there is a family history of cheating on their side of the family. My grandma cheated on my grandpa for years but they reconciled. My aunt herself had multiple affairs but is still married to my uncle. She tried blaming genetics on my mom's affair. I laughed out loud at the absurdity of that attempt to justify her affair, and my aunt is now mad at me for not hearing my egg donor out and her explanations for cheating. I hung up on the phone and prepared myself for meeting my mother, filthy spineless ex, and the lawyers face to face. And yesterday night that's exactly what I did. The meeting was crazy to say the least. Essentially, my egg donor said she knew it was wrong but she enjoyed the attention. She stated the intimacy was great and she enjoyed the thrill of it. She kept sleeping with my dad because she enjoyed their financial stability and carefree life and wanted to stay married. She purposely slept with him after each intimate encounter with my ex to ensure that if she got pregnant she could pass the child off. She also admitted to enjoying the knowledge that my ex enjoyed intimacy with her more than me. She then said that she is moving in with my ex to his new place and that she invited my twin sons to live with them. The twins have visited once since the affair and told her they don't like my ex and refuse to treat him like he's their father. My egg donor said eventually they'll come around once she's married to my ex and then she'll have her family back. I laughed out loud and told her she was delusional and needed psychiatric help. Then I told her I would be taking out an order of protection against her so she'd have no access to my minor children. She called me a jealous and ungrateful cow for not appreciating that she didn't terminate me. She said I should be happy that they didn't kick me out when I came home knocked up at 17. She even had the nerve to say I should be thankful she kept my husband happy when I couldn't so he didn't divorce me and leave me a broken and damaged good single mother. She then told my dad she suffered from postpartum depression after my birth and my dad ignored it. Apparently that made her feel alone so she felt justified in hating me and having affairs. She admitted to having multiple affairs from 6 months after I was born until this New Year's Eve and said she'd still be doing it if I hadn't ruined everything. So, turns out my 2 younger sisters may not be my dad's either. My dad is even more heartbroken and angry, but we did have both our lawyers present and we got it on record. After this, I sent a message to my ex through my lawyer that I will be filing an order of protection tomorrow so that my kids won't have to go to my ex's house if my mother is there. Update 2. My lying husband has been sleeping with my mother for 22 years, so I'm going to destroy both of their lives. So I was able to get temporary full physical and legal custody of my kids. My 14-year-old daughter asked me if I'd be willing to do family therapy with her and her dad. I did not want to do it. I fought it, but eventually I chose to do so for the sake of my daughter and her need to process everything and hopefully move on. I learned a lot more about the relationship between my ex and my egg donor due to homework the therapist gave us. My ex did reveal more things which I believe to be true. My egg donor had actually tried to seduce him well before she said she did, which was 18. From my ex's recollection, when my egg donor took over the youth group I was 15 and he was a few months from turning 15. She'd counsel him privately because he needed it. They kissed for the first time then. It was right around the time of the first kiss that my mom convinced him to ask me out and date me so they could keep seeing each other without suspicion. At this revelation, I was devastated. My entire relationship was built on a lie and my husband never loved me, and also a sense of relief knowing that I had absolutely nothing to do with their affair. The reason I believe this is true is that when he asked me out, I had to get permission from my parents to date. At the time the rule was no one could date before age 16. My mom went to bat for me, or so I thought. We started dating right after he turned 15. The timeline adds up. Another thing I found out, they did not have full intimacy until he turned 18, and I guess that was his birthday present from her. Now for the update on my egg donor. After the last phone call with my aunt, I cut off contact with her and my grandmother. I was tired of my aunt trying to guilt trip me into talking to my egg donor. My grandma is a whole other problem and is beginning to show signs of dementia and senility. She is still harassing my egg donor and calling her a WHRE of Babylon, which I'm okay with. Then came my baby delivery date. My younger sister were the ones who helped me with labor and delivery plan. My ex knew what the plans were, but also that I did not want him at the hospital until I had already given birth and was in a better place for him to meet his son. He agreed to this. The day I went into labor, my sister took my youngest children to her home while my older sister was with me in the room. Apparently, my middle child needed something from the school and reached out to my ex to pick it up. My egg donor was with him when he took the call. He refused to let her come along as I did not want my children around my egg donor. She apparently followed him in her car to the store and then my sister's house and threw a temper tantrum on the front lawn of my sister's house. My ex broke up with her and told her she was too much drama and it just wasn't worth it anymore. She flew into a rage and physically attacked him, then started destroying things in my sister's yard. The cops were called. My egg donor was arrested for domestic violence. At that point my ex, my sister, and I all took out orders of protection against her due to the instability in the situation. Update: my egg donor has gone into hiding. Once my twin sons told her unequivocally they'd never live with her and that they wanted nothing to do with her, especially after how she got arrested, she began a whole lot of guilt tripping and blaming them. She is now contesting the divorce from my dad and only speaking to him through her lawyer. As for my twin sister, who was previously on my egg donor's side, she got a wake-up call from this whole thing when my mother called her and berated her for 45 minutes for not bailing her out of jail. Apparently, my twin sister has been going through fertility issues. When my sister wasn't willing to pay the money to bail my egg donor out as she and her partner were saving up for another cycle of IVF, she realized that she was being manipulated and reached out to me. We have begun slowly talking again, but she is on my side regarding this all. She is also talking to my dad again, which for his sake, I'm happy that he is able to reconnect with her.
How I got fired from a job I quit over a year ago. Back in 2014, I had a job at a pizza place in a small farming town in Utah. I won't say the exact name, but it's one of those big chains known for having really greasy food. Around the start of July, I told my boss I was leaving in 2 weeks because I was moving to another state to be closer to family and hopefully find a better job. I finished up my time there, moved away, found a nicer job, and that seemed to be the end of it. But hold on, there's more to the story, as you might have guessed from the title. Fast forward to the summer of 2015, I get a call from a new manager at the pizza place. He's telling me he's been putting me on the work schedule and is not happy that I haven't shown up for any shifts. He says if I don't come in today, he'll have to fire me. I'm like, wait, didn't the old manager take me out of the system after I quit last year? The new guy gets all annoyed and says something like, if you quit a year ago, you shouldn't be in my schedule. I explain that I live in a different state now and have a different job, so I'm definitely not coming in to work there. He threatens to fire me again, and I'm just like, hey, I don't actually work for you anymore, so do whatever you want. And then he hangs up, and that's that. Until yesterday. I get a letter from the company's main office saying that according to their records, I haven't shown up for work since July 2014, and they're sorry, but they have to let me go. I can't help but laugh, especially since they sent the letter to the address I gave them when I quit. It's like they forgot I left a long time ago.
Parents of Reddit, what is the best weird flex but okay moment you've seen from your child? My son started second grade this week. A couple of weeks ago the school sent out postcards with the date and time of the open house and his teacher's name. I asked him if he was excited to be in Mrs. So-and-so's class, and he said yes, but he's also worried. I asked what he was worried about and he said what if she falls in love with me and wants to marry me? I laughed and reassured him that he need not worry, since she's already married. When my son was about 5 we went to visit relatives in the Washington, D.C. area. We were on the metro when my son eyed a very pretty professional young woman. I've got a lot of blocks, he told her. If you come to my room I'll show you. Then he made motorcycle noises for about 10 seconds. When I was an after-school tutor for primary school kids, I excused a boy to the bathroom. He came back telling me he made the biggest poo in the world. He intentionally didn't flush so that I could come look at it. I told him that was great, but it was art time. He said his big poo was art.
What is something you find truly disturbing but seems to be normalized? I have to say, one thing that really freaks me out is how normalized larceny and stealing seems to be in our society. It's like people just accept it as a part of life and don't even bat an eye when someone takes something that isn't theirs. I know this firsthand because I had this class female of a professor who was constantly stealing from her students. It started with little things like taking pencils and pens from our desks when we weren't looking, but it quickly escalated to her taking our homework and even exams. At first, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, but then I caught her in the act. I had left my completed exam on my desk to use the restroom, and when I came back, she was walking away with it tucked under her arm. I confronted her about it, but she acted like she had no idea what I was talking about. I tried to tell other students about it, but no one believed me. They all just thought I was making it up or trying to get attention. It was effing frustrating. But it wasn't just her. It's like there's this mentality that if you can get away with something, then it's okay to do it. People steal from their jobs, from their friends and family, from strangers on the street. It's effed. I don't know what the solution is, but we need to start holding people accountable for their actions. It shouldn't be okay to take something that doesn't belong to you just because you want it. And that's when poop really hit the fan. One day, our class female of a professor didn't show up for class. As we waited, rumors started to spread that she had been arrested for stealing from students. It was a surreal moment. On the one hand, I was glad that justice had been served, but on the other, I couldn't help but feel a little scared. If a professor could get away with stealing from her own students for so long, then what else was going on under our noses? It was a wake-up call for all of us, a reminder to be vigilant and always watch our backs. But that wasn't the end of the story. After the professor was arrested, it was discovered that she had been stealing from other students for years. She had been taking their money, their possessions, and even their identities. It was a huge scandal that rocked the entire school. People were furious and the school was forced to take action. The professor was eventually sentenced to prison, but the damage had already been done. It was a stark reminder that larceny and stealing are not to be taken lightly. We need to take a stand and make sure that those who break the law are held accountable for their actions. We can no longer accept this type of behavior as normal. It's a lesson we all need to learn, and I hope that this story serves as a reminder that we can't let these things slide. We must stand up and fight back against larceny and stealing, no matter how normalized it may seem. My husband decided to tell me that he co-signed on a $1 million home for his mother. Now she is refusing to sign a contract and I am considering divorce. My husband and I have been happily married for over 2 years. We own a home and do quite well for ourselves financially. He generally maintains the finances for our family. However, my husband's mother and sister live a few hours away, and I have always felt they were very abusive towards him. They speak down to him, disrespect him, and essentially make him feel as if it's his responsibility to clean up their financial mishaps and poor choices. There are other incidents of how they have treated me disrespectfully that even I have distanced myself from them. That is also why my husband decided for us to move away from them. Now, my husband, sister, and mother have been renting a home from another family member, which is well under market value, at least $3,000 less than what it would rent for now. The owner has decided to sell the home. Mind you, it has been trashed and not maintained by the sister and mother. They have little to no respect for having had it so good for so long. The owner gave them 90 days to vacate the premises. Immediately, the sister and mother asked my husband to help them buy a home. They live and work in one of the most expensive housing markets in the US. Additionally, they do not qualify for the type and amount of loan needed to buy a modest home in the area, and they refuse to move to a more affordable location. After a lot of back and forth, they finally asked my husband to co-sign on a very basic older home that costs $1 million. I immediately told them absolutely not, and I voiced my concerns to my husband. He is usually very level-headed and financially savvy, but I had to be the one to push him and his family to some sort of plan for how this would all work. Going from paying $1,000 a month in rent to well over $6,000 a month on a mortgage, not even including bills, seems questionable and a terrible decision at worst. I asked my husband why they couldn't move into a modest apartment and make a plan to buy in a year or two. He didn't really have an answer but agreed that they needed a plan for him to engage. Again, after several weeks of back and forth with his family, they had yet to provide any solid plan to pay the mortgage bills and avoid default. Who would be responsible for repairs? No idea. Finally, last week, before I left for a work trip, my husband told me he would not be co-signing on the home and that they had done zero planning. I was so relieved and was able to relax on my trip. I returned home at the end of the week and took a shower when he walked in and told me he had co-signed for the home. To say I was taken aback is an understatement. I went through all the emotions in a short time, but it wasn't until the next morning that what he had done really hit me. He made a risky investment with people who don't respect him and did it behind my back after assuring me he wouldn't. He kept telling me I was safe from any potential impact, but I don't understand how that could be. I asked him to walk me through the conversation, the plans, and any assurance that our own assets were safe. He couldn't. He then had the audacity to tell me, "At least I decided to tell you." That is when I lost it. I felt betrayed and disrespected. I cried and screamed and told him how he could not see how they used him. I told him I was questioning his integrity in our relationship. We are also in the midst of the IVF process, and it has been extremely hard on me and my body. I told him I didn't think he deserved to be the father of my children, and if we did have children, his family would have limited contact and not be allowed around my children. At first, he was remorseful, but then he got defensive of his family even though I and many others have tried to show him how abusive they are. I told him if he wanted any chance of making our relationship right, he was to immediately work with his mother and sister to write a contract that he had majority ownership in the home so that if they continued to make poor decisions and default, he could sell the house. To no one's surprise, his family would not agree to these terms because they believe living there is enough to solidify it's theirs. For the last 3 days, I have asked over and over again why he made this drastic decision without a plan. My friends agree that this is a divorce-worthy offense, but the reality is besides this, we have a wonderful life together, and I love him dearly. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for calling my husband stupid and threatening divorce over co-signing the loan? What was your experience with a traumatic childbirth and how did it bring your family closer? My sister Jane was 7 months pregnant with her first kid when she had a effing traumatic birth. They were planning for a home birth, but complications arose and they had to rush to the hospital. Once there, the baby's heart rate dropped during contractions and the medical team advised that Jane's husband stay out of the delivery room to avoid adding stress. So he waited until after the birth to be reunited with his wife and child. Things got worse when Jane started losing a lot of blood due to scarring from her previous C-section, putting both mother and child at risk. The medical staff worked their asses off trying to save them both. Throughout it all, her husband watched from his assigned bed, not saying anything about how hard this must have been for Jane or how relieved he was that everything turned out okay in the end, but trusting in the medical team and following their instructions so he could support his wife during labor. And even though I wasn't too keen on it, they still decided on Valentino as their son's name, which is obviously their choice regardless of what anyone else thinks, including me. In any case, despite all that trauma during childbirth, it brought my family closer together in celebration of Valentino's arrival as a symbol of our strength and resilience. My dad keeps calling me fat. I've always been on the thinner side, and my weight has fluctuated a bit over the years due to some health problems. At my lowest, I was 86 pounds, and at my heaviest, I reached 116. I'm well aware that I'm not overweight, and I don't have any self-esteem or body image issues. But my dad, well, he just can't seem to stop commenting on my weight and calling me fat. It's been a lifelong thing. You're getting fat. Have you gained weight? You look like you're getting fat. These phrases are like a broken record. It doesn't matter if we're at a family gathering or just having a casual conversation, he always finds a way to bring up my weight. It's embarrassing, and it's frustrating. I tried addressing it once. At a party, in front of a room full of people, he kept pestering me about my weight. "How much do you weigh?" he asked repeatedly. I finally mustered the courage to say, "I don't like it when you make comments on my body and weight. I don't do that to you or anyone else. There's no reason for you to do that to me." He got offended and denied making comments about my body, but he let it go. Now, I'm a few months postpartum, and I'm working on getting back to my pre-pregnancy weight. I've only gained 5 pounds from my usual weight, which is entirely normal. But during a family gathering with parents, grandparents, aunts, and cousins, my father blurts out, "You've gotten really fat." I couldn't believe it. He said it out of nowhere, and I was mortified. I tried addressing it again, asking him why he won't stop making these comments when I've told him how uncomfortable it makes me feel. His response? He claimed he's just worried about my health because he's my father, and that's his way of checking up on me. Nobody in the room defended me because they're used to his comments and laughed them off. I get that he might not intend to hurt me, but I've asked him to stop, and he won't. So, am I being too sensitive?
What kind of teenage bullshit probably happened at Hogwarts that wasn't mentioned in the Harry Potter books? Getting really angst and going for a self-reflective ride on your broom. Wizard drugs, Fred and George were definitely slinging that fairy dust. Couples making an unbreakable vow to stay together and then either being miserable their entire lives or dying 6 months later. FUI, flying under the influence. Hufflepuff Puff Pass.
My spoiled siblings refused to visit my amazing mom on her deathbed. They were waiting for her to die so that they could take all of her money and belongings. My mom is the epitome of what a mother should be. She sacrificed her needs to put ours first and was always there to lend a helping hand no matter what. She might not have liked us all the time but always loved us no matter what. When my mom moved in with me, it was great. I loved having her here since it was like living with my best friend, but as a grown-up this time. I have 4 other siblings, one who lives down the road to me, another who lives 20 miles away, and 2 that live out of state. The 2 that live out of state really visit, which I can't fault them because they have to make the trip to and from. But that has never stopped them from visiting just to ask for money. The only time any of them, kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids included, would come to see her or just call and talk to her was when they wanted something money. My mom has always hid the fact she was hurt by us, but we knew, and we always ignored her problems. We were never there for her like she was for us, and I'm trying to make up for that sorry mistake. My family only sees my mom as an ATM and I have to guilt-trip them into giving her any type of attention. It didn't work at first because they all said they were too busy living their lives or they had work, but after a while they started coming over just to talk and I could see how much that meant to my mom. After they visited, my mom would tell me we were her pride and joy and she was happy to raise such good people. It killed me to hear this because they would never voluntarily visit her unless they wanted something from her. Then, my mom got sick. I took care of her for as long as I could at home, but eventually she got worse and needed professional care. Unfortunately, I could not afford that, so I reached out to my siblings for help, but none of them wanted to take care of her. They couldn't even do something like taking her to doctor appointments, so it was my mistake in thinking they would actually help their dying mother now. When she had her heart attack, she told me what items she wanted me to give my siblings, if she passed away. Thankfully she pulled through, mostly because I hadn't gotten used to the idea of living without a mom, but also because I wouldn't want to give my siblings anything on her behalf. Now, my mom's health is really bad, and none of my siblings have come to check up on her in the hospital. Only my little family would visit or stay with her. My mom's practically on her deathbed, and all I have heard from my family is what they want to have of hers when she passes. That's made me really not want to give them anything because at the end of the day, they're just vultures waiting for her to die so they can take everything that used to belong to her. They don't care about my mom as a person, only her possessions. She loves all of us unconditionally, but they cannot be bothered with her because it might interfere with their life. They even mentioned how they want to rummage through all of mom's personal property to see if they want anything. I'm thinking about just donating everything to charity, and I wouldn't even feel bad. I would be filled with glee while I smile and laugh right in their faces as I tell them what I've done. I know it's petty, but with everything that has gone on I just don't believe they deserve anything. I do hate how they have made me feel so much anger towards them, but worse is how they have made mom feel. Last week, my mom passed away and I was lucky enough to be with her when she took her last breath. Thankfully she did go peacefully. I did end up giving my siblings the items that my mother requested and as I suspected they did what I knew they would. They bombarded me with all sorts of questions. Did mom leave a life insurance policy? Did she have any money in the bank? I'm coming over and going through mom's stuff to see what I want. They're just vultures. And when I gave them the items mom specified they looked at them and said, "That's it?" I also let them know there was no life insurance policy, and if they wanted they could help me with her medical bills and help pay for the funeral. Guess how much they offered? Nothing. No surprise there. I let them know when the service is and after that I will be cutting all contact with them. They asked, "Is there before or after you give us the rest of mom's things?" It would not surprise me if I received a court summons soon to produce any and all of mom's records because they don't believe she didn't have the loads of money that they were counting on. I am planning on hiring someone to lose my V card. I, 23 female, have my V card and am neurodivergent. To be honest, I haven't had the best luck in love and high school was very tough. Never kissed anyone or went on a date. I've only had 3 dates after high school. I dated my ex last year, and I was confident we would make love. However, he was very critical of my body. I was very inexperienced but he judged my kissing and my touching. There was an incident where he coerced me to do things in bed that I didn't want to do, and we broke up shortly after. I have been meaning to make love, but I don't want a relationship. It took me a long time to get to the job I want and I am very stable in my life, and I am afraid a relationship will ruin that. I am still working on myself and I am very busy so it's best if I don't date for now. I have been meaning to get with someone on Tinder but I am terrified that a guy may coerce me to do things with him. I don't think going on Tinder is the safest environment for me. There are definitive boundaries I have and I am afraid these guys will not follow them. I'm also not experienced, and I don't want guys to criticize me the same way my ex did. Where I am from, sex work is legal and I came across a Samantha X podcast with Reese Sensual, male sex worker. In his social medias, he mentioned he had SA, DV and neurodivergent clients who want a safe space to explore their sexuality. I have not stopped thinking about it and I think I will go through with it. I have researched independent male sex workers nearby and I have my eyes on a nice looking guy who is a bit older than me. I just want to make love in a safe environment where there is no judgment and I can be vulnerable.
Am I the a-hole for making fun of a baby with a nerd name? My wife worked for a company where she entertains clients and this night was a nice dinner in hopes of gaining a couple's business. So on this night she was entertaining this couple, Gilbert and his pregnant wife. We sat down and ordered some fine beverages, Gilbert's wife who had water. Now I must say before I go any further into this, I'm a lightweight when drinking, I don't have much of a filter ever, even when sober, and what I say isn't meant to be degrading or to hurt the people. But when I'm talking it just comes out because I'm thinking about it. Who doesn't want to say what they are thinking? That's where most people's filter kicks in, but not me. So by the time we get our appetizers, I'm 2 frozen drinks in and Gilbert and I are having a good time as men do while the women are chatting it up. Well, by the time the main course gets here, I'm feeling pretty good and my filter is gone. So now that dinner has arrived we are all in the same conversation. Gilbert and his wife are talking about being new parents and the due date is almost here. So Gilbert's wife tells us they are having a baby boy. So we are congratulating them and toast to the new parents and baby boy. At this point I'm 3 drinks in with Gilbert because we are not driving home. I should have said I don't remember anybody's name once they are introduced to me, my brain just doesn't hold on to that information for whatever reason. So as Gilbert's wife told us that the baby's boy name is going to be Gilbert, I yelled out Gilbert. I started laughing hysterically and couldn't stop. My wife was kicking me under the table non-stop while I was laughing. So I finally was able to get out, why would you name your kid Gilbert? He will get made fun of his whole life. Gilbert and his wife looked devastated. My wife grabbed me and said somewhat quietly his name is Gilbert. Without hesitation I looked at Gilbert and said you know what I'm talking about then. I just couldn't stop laughing for a few minutes. So with my leg throbbing from my wife kicking me under the table, the mood completely went south from there and we finished the dinner mainly in silence. My wife was upset with me when we left that night, but she knows I don't have much of a filter. After that she stopped inviting me to dinners because I was costing her clients bonuses and fully paid for tropical trips for 2. Now a few months later I ran into Gilbert totally by chance. When I saw him I yelled loudly and said hey man what's up? He was kind enough and came over and talked to me. I asked if the baby was born yet, he rattled off the stats of 8 pounds 4 ounces and the full name of the baby, it wasn't Gilbert. I'm not proud of what happened, but I still think I saved the kid from being picked on by kids at school. We will really never know, but that's my story. Was I the asshole?
What did a teacher do that made you automatically gain respect for them? This will probably get lost, but I want to shout out this teacher of mine. She was our AP English language teacher for our senior year of high school. On one of the first days in her class, she explained how she went from being a kindergarten teacher to a high school senior teacher. She always saw off her cute and happy kindergarten kids, but as they grew up and they came back to visit her, a lot of them came to her troubled and dissatisfied with their lives. It made her real emotional about how people had treated these kids she loved so much, how she couldn't afford to see kids so disconnected with life, and how she didn't want them to suffer as they headed out towards college in their adult lives, so she changed curriculums and started teaching seniors. If I remember right, it always came down to sending her kids off with a smile, prepping them for the real world. I respect the hell out of her and she'll always be one of my favorites, truly like a mother to all her students.
Overheard my wife tell her friend on the phone that she settled for being with me, and that marrying me was her last resort. I overheard my wife talking to one of her best friends on the phone while I was passing the bedroom. This friend is in a serious relationship. My wife then said to her, "Sweetie, remember it's your choice. Don't settle for just anyone. That's the mistake I made. Who knows who else I could have had. My name was my very last resort, and now look where it made me end up." Hearing that honestly broke my heart in two. Does she even love me? Why am I being treated as a second base? Am I being dramatic and overreacting? I haven't said anything about it since. I honestly don't know what to do, but hearing her say has really made me upset. Just did one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Today after breakfast I told her we should sit down and talk. She was hesitant, but I said it was important. We went to the living room and she said to me, "I already know what this is about." My post apparently made it to the front page, so of course she saw it after scrolling down a bit under popular. Of course the waterworks started happening right away. I told her what she said had deeply hurt me, but obviously she already knew that since she read my post. Through her tears, she said I was just joking, I wasn't serious. She then went on saying stuff like I love you. I told her I can't be in a marriage where my so doesn't love me the same way I love them. She tried to tell me that she loved me and that I meant something to her. But it was all boo. She said she didn't want to lose me. I told her I don't think this marriage was the right decision. And from there I basically told her it was over. I told her I knew how she really felt about me, and that it was messed up. She basically played with my emotions. For all those wondering, we have no kids, and I pay fully for the apartment we live in, and I own almost everything we have. Other than her clothes. I even pay for her car. So after all of this she'll have little to nothing left. Before our marriage, we agreed to sign a prenup, and at that moment, I've never been so happy with a decision I've made in my life. After that, it was a few seconds of awkward silence, before she said to me, "F you." She started screaming at me, telling me you just can't end things like that. I told her I could do whatever I wanted, and that's when she became very hostile. She screamed at me saying, "You're the worst relationship I've ever been in. You think I can't find someone again? Do you think you'll ever from someone as good as me? You're an idiot, my name. She grabbed her bag and phone, and said I'm leaving. Before slamming the door behind her. At that moment I felt like I was on one of those dramatic sitcoms you'd find of TV. I sat down on the couch and cried, and I'm still crying as I type this up. It's both happy and sad tears, and I knew it was only time before she cheated on me or left me. She never loved me, it was obvious. Our relationship only went one way, and I feel like a complete idiot for not seeing it earlier. I live in California, and I'm gonna start the process to annul our marriage. Tomorrow, I'm gonna start throwing all of her belongings into trash bags, cause that's essentially where they belong. I'm not throwing out her stuff. Just using the trash bags as a way to give her back the things she owns. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your kind words and your great advice. All of you gave me the courage to stand up for myself, and I know my life will certainly improve as a result. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my wife financially? So I, male 39, am married to the love of my life, F36. We have 2 sweet kids, ages 5 and 9, and we all live in a house in a nice small typical Scandinavian town. Our economy is mostly shared, more on this in a bit. I'm an engineer, working as consultant. Great pay and benefits. I make more than I spend. My wife has a master's degree in human communication, a horribly useless degree. Since graduating something like 8 years ago, she has been unable to find a job in her field. Here is the thing. My wife has very wealthy parents, like no financial worries at all wealthy. Thanks to them, her share of our house was gifted to her. I still pay mortgage on my share. They gifted her a brand new car, I drive my own. Each Christmas, they gift her $20,000, her, not me. Besides that yearly gift, she has more or less been without income for most of her adult life, including when she attended university. She did hold a few odd jobs here and there. We share all family-related expenses, utilities, food, insurances, vacations, kids' stuff and so on, through a shared account, 50-50. Besides that, we have our own accounts. But many purchases goes toward the family/house/kids anyway, so it's not like airtight. You know how it is. My wife recently got a part-time job, 15 to 20 hours/week, in a clothing store. Pay is terrible, hours are weird and she doesn't get along with the owner. Therefore, she is considering quitting. I'm telling her to go ahead, but also that even a bad job pays better than no job. In my opinion, she is a little picky with jobs. Won't do cleaning, elderly care and other stuff like that, despite those being jobs she is able to get without any qualifications. She keeps applying for jobs in her own field, but so far without any luck besides a couple of first-round interviews. The market is very limited. Because of increased cost of living, you all know the story, her yearly gift and small paycheck doesn't quite cut it anymore. She tells me that she is barely making ends meet. Therefore, she has asked me to help her out, by paying a larger share of our shared expenses. I basically said no. I told her that not many people are as privileged as her and that she really should be less picky, or even consider requalification, new education and/or field of work. I felt bad telling her, but also needed to be honest with her. I could help her out, but that just doesn't sit right with me, all things considered. What is the strangest coincidence you've seen? The year I graduated, there was a professor mentor with a good reputation for being responsible to students. This professor not only provided clear directions, design specifications, and application scenarios for his students, but also had specific physical references. Basically, the students just recreated what he had made and wrote about it. The mentor carefully selected 10 relevant papers for a student to refer to. The mentor believed that with such a simple topic and being an undergraduate thesis, there should be no mistakes under his guidance. After all, as long as the plagiarism check passed and the grammar was correct, it would be acceptable for the presentation. Who would have thought that the problem would arise from one of those papers? These papers were all high-quality articles, with practical and concise methods that are PhD-level writing. The student's thesis was relatively simple, and after the student read the paper, they found that one section of this paper could perfectly fulfill the project. So this student took that section as the core idea and based his whole essay on it. He used all the results of that paper, the trajectory calculation and component selection, various performance curves, and model charts, which could be inserted into the article without affecting the plagiarism rate. The mentor was highly skilled and thought there was no problem after looking at the initial draft submitted by the student. It was an acceptable undergraduate thesis. The difference between a good and a bad undergraduate thesis was merely the quality of referencing the papers. It was obvious that some images were copied, but it wasn't a big issue. The mentor instructed the student to use more of their own words, pay attention to the plagiarism rate, and that it should be fine. Unexpectedly, during the presentation, one of the committee members became furious after reading it, claiming that this student had copied their doctoral thesis and should be punished for plagiarism, which meant they would fail this class and have one more year of school. The student cried foul, saying that it was absolutely impossible to copy the thesis of their own professor. Even the mentor was surprised because he had provided the student with ample reference papers, and it seemed unlikely that the student would specifically copy the thesis of their own professor. Since it involved the student's graduation and the need to consider the mentor's reputation, the committee members decided to resolve the matter separately after the presentation. After the presentation ended, the mentor took the student to find evidence. They looked at the student's thesis, and the reference papers, which was one the mentor had given him. The thesis was indeed copied, but the author of the copied thesis was not the presentation professor, and the school was also not the same. So the two of them took the thesis and went to find the presentation professor. The presentation professor also brought out their own thesis from that year, and after comparing them, it was clear that the copied thesis was not theirs, but the content was the same. They all stared at each other, not knowing what was going on. In the end, the student's mentor, who had more experience, extracted the section of text copied by the student and checked it for plagiarism separately. They found a list of duplicate papers and checked the reference literature. Well, the truth was revealed on the spot. The student had copied someone's master's thesis, which referenced another doctoral thesis, which in turn referenced the presentation professor's doctoral thesis. These doctoral and master's theses had a lot of content, including major conclusions and minor ones that were difficult to solve independently. It was normal to copy one or two minor conclusions. However, when it came to the undergraduate thesis, it only needed the core and main conclusion, and the student had copied the core conclusion almost entirely. Seeing their own thesis being passed down through 3 generations without any changes to the punctuation marks, the presentation professor was quite pleased. In the end, they didn't ask the student to retake the thesis, just to rewrite it and have a second presentation. As for the second generation author who copied the presentation professor's thesis, it was said that they had already left the industry, so there was no way to deal with them, and they could only let it go. A paper that had gone through nearly 20 years of storms and had been passed on to one's own desk through a colleague's student. Truly, fate is strange. I watched a biker die. When I was 5, I was in the car with my dad and my uncle. We were driving to Anchorage, through a long straight stretch of highway through a swampy area, and we're going along, abiding by the speed limit and all that, when this motorcyclist comes out of effing nowhere and careens into the front of our car. I think he might have been intoxicated, mostly because nobody just willingly drives into the wrong lane. The guy goes flying, and his bike ends up in a swampy patch about 20 feet to the left of the highway. My dad and my uncle grab me and go to check on the poor guy who just got sent flying. They run up to him, he's face down on the pavement, and there's a load of blood all over the ground. My dad crouches down, putting me at about eye level with this guy's ear, and all of a sudden the biker guy rolls over and makes the most pain noise imaginable. His face was essentially gone from the tip of the nose down, leaving most of his face just exposed muscle and bone. He looked straight into my eyes, and my heart stopped. I have never felt fear quite like what I felt when he looked at me, as if he was death itself. He blinked and made a freaky noise and just stopped breathing. What is your darkest secret? So I'm about 16, and I always go down to this bank to take money out. I only had a savings account, so I didn't have an ATM card at the time. There was always this cute chick working there. She'd always smile and greet me, and I'd always try to go to her line. As she was a bank teller, I only saw her sitting down. This is important later. One day, I just work up all the confidence I can and I ask her out as I'm taking out some money. She said yes. So we set up a time around the weekend for me to come over and pick her up. She gives me her number, I get her address, and I skip home as happy as can be. So it's the weekend, and I drive up to her house in my little beat-up Honda. I knock on her door and her dad answers. A split second of oh crap comes over me, but he just gives me this heartwarming smile and invites me into this house. I instantly feel at ease and we go sit down in the living room. Her dad is all happy like I'm so glad you're taking my daughter out and I really appreciate it and all this craziness. So I'm starting to think to myself, oh what have I gotten myself into? So her dad reaches into his pocket and pulls out a set of car keys. He says I want you to take my car. I said no, that's okay, I have my car. He's all like no, practically forcing the keys into my hand, still keeping his big smile on his face. No sooner does he give me the keys than do I hear from up the stairs, bzzz, no crap, she's in a wheelchair. A split second of shallow human being comes over me, but I think about it and say to myself I can do this. She's awesome and has a great personality, screw it. We go outside, and I realize why her dad wanted me to take his truck. It was all rigged up with the belts and harnesses and the door that came all the way out for the wheelchair. So I took his truck, and we head to the movies. Best part? The handicap spot. So we're in the theater, and no sooner does the movie start, than she starts putting her hands on my junk. That's totally cool with me. We start making out almost during the whole movie. My parents are out of town that weekend, so I ask her if she wants to come back to my place. She says yes, so we get back in her dad's truck and we're on the way to my house. We arrive at my house. I have stairs, so I have to carry her inside. Thankfully my room is on the first floor, so I get her inside, throw her, and we start going at it. When all of a sudden I hear a pop and her leg comes off. She's got a fake leg. How did I miss that? Keep going, she screams as I pull her leg and throw that across the room.
Those who have been to a ruined wedding, what happened? I played a wedding where as we started playing the set, everyone ran outside and nobody was to be seen for the rest of the night. I originally assumed it was because nobody liked us, but the bride came in afterwards and said there was a huge fight involving multiple members of both families and everyone basically went home upset, injured or in a police van. We couldn't stop playing since we were paid and it was our job, and the only person watching was the drunk uncle dancing on his own asking for requests we didn't know. I was not born yet, but my parents rented the observation deck on the Hancock Building in Boston for their reception, tallest building in the city, beautiful view. My dad pored over historic weather charts to figure out what day was statistically most likely to be nice out. Day of the wedding comes and of course, thick fog unlike anything they'd ever seen before. Couldn't see a thing out the windows of the room they had picked specifically for the view. Worked out well though. They were happily married for nearly 30 years before cancer took my dad's life a few years ago.
Men, how did you overcome your crippling fear of rejection? The first time I asked out a girl was in high school because I had been crushing on her for a year. Instead of accepting or rejecting me gently, she just started laughing like I had just cracked a prime Dave Chappelle level joke. Then she shouted in front of the entire school, "You do know that I can't ever date a nerd like you, right?" More people started laughing and it soon became the most humiliating experience of my life. As a result, I never dared ask out another girl. Now my best friend on the other hand was always confident and could easily approach women as his carefree persona made it simple for anyone to be comfortable around him. Thanks to that, he had a pretty successful dating life. I was jealous of him because I wanted to get girls as easily as him, and his life was so much more exciting than mine. While I would stay home to binge watch Netflix shows and order takeout and gaming, He would always go out with his friends to clubs and exclusive parties. After living like this for years, I got a reality check when I visited my younger brother for his birthday, and he bragged to me about a girl he had slept with. I was appalled that even my teenage brother had more game than me. That second round of humiliation led me to do something I never thought I would. I downloaded Tinder. I thought it would help me overcome my fear of rejection because if I was rejected, at least it wasn't in person so that would weaken the blow. But setting up my Tinder profile was nearly impossible since I had no idea how to make a woman swipe right on me. My bio only had my age and college name, and my pictures were taken from bad angles, but they were all I had. I wasn't expecting many matches from that, but I still wasn't happy that my messages were drier than a Popeye's biscuit. And the one time a very pretty goth girl swiped right on me, I had no idea how to keep the conversation going. I never thought I would be the type to ask a woman, "What are you doing?" every 5 minutes, but I did just that. She never talked to me again after I asked, "How are you?" twice in a row. This happened 2 more times, once with a girl who went to my high school and another with a pretty girl who showed some interest in me. After fumbling her by getting too passionate about a show I had recently watched, I got fed up with my lack of social skills and inability to flirt, and I was determined to change. So, I swallowed my pride and asked my friend for advice since he was the only woman expert I knew. I called him and begged for him to share his secret sauce or at least give me a few tips on how to talk to women. That's when he revealed something shocking. He said that he used to be just like me, introverted, had the personality of plain oatmeal, and he didn't know a thing about women. I asked him how he was able to change because I needed to change as well. He told me to use a dating AI and listed off some specific ones, but he said Pickup Pal was the best one because it helped him flirt better. Obviously, I didn't believe him and thought he wanted to gatekeep his secret because there was no way an app could change an introvert into a playboy. But he wanted me to just try it and to trust him. Honestly, I didn't want to take his advice because I thought he was messing with me and trying to clown me. So, I started watching short YouTube guides about women and how to interact with them. But every guide I saw had the same generic information. Say hello, be yourself, be confident. None of that worked because I got lost after the hello part. And the one time I tried to be confident, I cracked an anime joke, which was so bad the girl I was talking to actually said she had to go home. And this was over text. After that, I became somewhat angry and almost fell into the caramelized bald man red pill manosphere when it came to talking to women, but I'm so glad I didn't. I was getting desperate, and my last ditch effort to break out of my monotonous routine was downloading Pickup Pal. It couldn't hurt to try at this point, and even though I still didn't have high expectations for it, the app worked out better than I thought it would. I used it to fix my Tinder profile because it had a bio generator and photo analyzer. For my bio, I listed some of my cooler interests, such as photography and gaming, and copied what it generated onto my Tinder profile. And it chose the best pictures to use, which, thank God, because I originally had a picture of me holding a fish on my profile and I thought that was okay. The app told me to get rid of that first. It could also generate a response to a message to keep the conversation going, but I didn't have a use for that since I needed to get matches first. However, with a new bio and pictures, I had 4 matches in just 3 days, and I used the dating AI on all of them. All my conversations went well because I constantly generated interesting and funny replies to every message. But it didn't take me long to realize I was seriously connecting with one girl since we had the most in common. We started bonding over TV shows and games, and our conversations quickly moved on to other interests. She even liked Black Ops 2 Zombies. Talking to her felt natural, and I only used the AI when our conversations started dying because I never wanted to stop talking to her. After 3 weeks of nonstop texting, I asked her out on a date since I really wanted to meet up with her. She said yes, but then realized I had no idea where to take her. I was about to freak out, but I checked the AI to see if it had anything that would help me, and thankfully it had a date generator. All I had to do was put a location and her interests, and then it would pick the perfect places to take her. I chose to take her to this popular Mexican restaurant, and she loved the food. I was mostly worried about our date being awkward or me not knowing what to say because previously, me talking to girls IRL was similar to Bambi on ice. Luckily, our conversation went smoothly, just like it did over text, because using the AI consistently meant I knew what to say when our talks died down. Talking about things I liked and asking her if she liked it too kept the conversation going for a while, and I got to know her by asking about her past. She talked about her hardships throughout her childhood, and I realized by the way she was speaking that she still had a bit of remaining trauma. Having her trust me to tell me everything made me care and fall for her even more. I wanted to know every single thing about her, and even though this was our first date, I enjoyed it so much that I couldn't wait to go out with her again. Then, our conversations extended past texting and we called for hours instead. We were always staying up to talk and those were the best nights of my life, and it was clear we were both into each other, so I asked her to be my girlfriend. We've been dating for 3 months, and I'm really happy with her. Though I'll admit, I still use Pickup Pal when I want to take her on dates because I always want things to be perfect for her. I really hope she never finds out. I am going to have an affair on my wife, but I plan to tell her first. One day I could not find my phone, but my wife's phone was on the kitchen counter, so I decided to use her phone to call mine. As I opened her phone, it was in a texting thread with her ex-boyfriend, who lives across the country, where they were sharing intimate pictures and videos of themselves. I found out this has been going on for 9 months. I was shocked because we have sex frequently and have an adventurous bedroom. Thing is, my wife has had self-image and confidence issues for the last few years because of weight gain. She always calls herself fat and says I'm so much better looking than she is. I reassure her that I think she is SI and beautiful and give her lots of words of affirmation as she says this is her love language. However, I must admit that I do not find her as attractive as when we were dating before this weight gain. When she brings up being dissatisfied with her weight, I try to be supportive and ask if there is anything I can do that can help her. But my attempts are met with her saying how lucky I am to have such good genes and my parents aren't overweight like hers. It infuriates me when she says things like this because I am someone who prioritizes my health and well-being and puts in the work, while she does not. I enjoy going to the gym and would go 7 days a week if I had the time. I also completed my first triathlon this year, which I am proud of and trained hard for. I think it helps that I was a college athlete as training and discipline was ingrained in my daily routine during those years. I have tried endlessly to get her to come to the gym with me, offered to pay for a trainer or any other type of fitness class she is interested in, but she declines, saying she won't like it or doesn't have time. My dilemma is, since I am in the gym a lot, I have met some pretty good friends who share my passion for fitness. One of these friends is a woman around the same age as me. She is very attractive and is extremely fit. She is single and knows I have a wife. She has also met my wife. We have gone out for drinks as a group with our other gym friends, and I have noticed she always takes the seat next to mine. A couple of times she has sat on my lap, which I felt awkward about, but it also excited me. My wife rarely comes to these outings with the group because she says she doesn't view these people as her friends, just mine. My gym friend has expressed interest in just the two of us grabbing dinner or drinks together, but I have declined each time out of respect to my marriage, but I find her invitations very tempting. Now that I know my wife has opened up our marriage, I feel justified in pursuing something with my gym friend. The spark is undeniable with her, and the thought of our unclothed bodies laying on top one another drives me mad. We will be grabbing drinks as a group tomorrow night, and I intend on being open to her advances and being flirtatious back to see where it leads. I have also decided to tell my wife that I know about her affair with her ex-boyfriend and that I am okay with it, but I will be pursuing an affair of my own. I didn't want to go behind her back and thought being open about the situation would be best. I expect her to get emotional and shed a lot of tears, but my mind is made up. I've always been an eye for an eye type of person and would not be able to forgive her without having an experience of my own. I would hold way too much resentment towards her. It is likely our marriage ends in divorce if she is not okay with me pursuing this, and I am okay with that.
It's been 10 years and I still can't forgive my mom. When I was around 17, I didn't have a lot of money, but I wanted to get my mom a present for Mother's Day before I left for college. I bought my mom a bag of Butterfinger candy and wrote her a long letter about how I appreciated as a kid when she would pick the Butterfingers out of my Halloween candy because she knew I didn't like them. I said that that's what mothers do, they remove the parts they know their kids won't like, to help keep childhood special. Granted, my mother rarely did nice things for me, and this was one of the few things I could conjure up of my mother being kind to me. I have a hard time showing positive affection towards people, and, even though it was a small gift, it felt like making this gift took a lot out of me. I set the present up on the kitchen table so she would see it in the morning. On the way home from church that day, she cried in the car and told us none of us must love her since nobody got her a present. I asked her about mine and she laughed at me in front of my siblings and told me my cheap excuse for a gift must have been some last-minute crap I was trying to pass off as a gift. A bag of candy isn't a gift, and if all she's worth is a bag of candy, then she must be worth nothing. I quiet raged in the backseat and cried without noise because I knew I'd get whipped if she caught me crying. When we got home, I hid in my room so I could be as alone as I've always felt. She made me come out of my room multiple times and fend my gift to her while she would continue to tear the concept of it apart. I finally told her that I would simply never give her another Mother's Day gift ever again. This was the opposite effect she was trying to have, and after this point I don't remember what happened. A lot of my childhood is blanks. Here we are 10 years later. I live on the opposite side of a large country and I speak with her maybe every 5 days in a handful of texts. I tell her Happy Mother's Day when the time comes, but I have never sent her another gift, even when she asks. Instead, I buy Mother's Day gifts for my friends who are mothers that I watch treat their daughters with the love and compassion I'm still desperately searching for.
My friends don't seem to care about me the way I care about them. Hi, I 19M have recently joined an online friend group. We've been friends for the past few months and we have fun hanging out, but they don't seem to care about me the way I care about them. I ask them how they are every day and attend to their problems and always help them out with any pain they feel, no matter how bad of a mood I'm in. I guess I just figured out that they wouldn't do the same for me. It's not that they don't care for me or don't see me as their friend. If I'm clearly struggling a lot or haven't talked a lot recently, they come to check in on me. The feeling of them messaging me first and asking how my day is going is genuinely amazing to me, but it happens so rarely. They have also expressed how much they appreciate my care. I just wish they would return it. After all, I ask them how their day is going every day. What really doesn't help is I love one of them romantically. I can tell she really doesn't feel the same for me. I'm not angry or particularly sad about it. It's just I can never seem to make her laugh the way the others can. I also can't hold a good conversation with her. I don't have any intention of leaving her or cutting her off. We still have fun when we hang out together. It's just outside of that we don't do much. I know for a fact that they care about me and value me and my care. They are not willing to return the care I give them. This is reasonable considering I give them an extreme amount of care. I know they are also going through rough times considering I get them to confide to me since I don't like seeing them in any bad mood ever and encourage them to open up about how they feel. I know they're busy and have their own lives they want to live. I just wish I mattered to them the way they mattered to me.
My husband scolded me for giving him gifts instead of lovemaking. I always buy my husband a couple things for Christmas. I got him shoes and cologne this year. I knew he doesn't love gifts, but he hasn't said something like this before. He spends more on me, and our children get a lot of presents. But last night he said to me, "You shouldn't have bought me anything. I would have preferred some lovemaking." I didn't know what to say at first, so I said, "But that's not special." He told me, "You are special to me. I can buy myself what I want. Next year just take your clothes off." I just nodded. I felt self-conscious. He has the right to tell me how he feels, but it was like a dagger in my heart. I don't know why it hurt, but it did.
What's the worst/best thing you've ever seen happen at a wedding? My mother, at my eldest brother's wedding, decided that since she wasn't paying for the alcohol, was going to get her money's worth. She downed about 6 generous glasses of wine at the wedding supper and hit up the open bar shortly afterwards. She then decided she was going to dance with the, still happily married, father of the bride and started groping him and trying to grind on him to sexy songs like Kodachrome by Simon and Garfunkel and Dancing Queen as well as other ABBA classics. After things got really uncomfortable, I stepped in for a dance with her and told her under no circumstances is she to go near that man again as she is making a fool of herself. She leaves the dance floor much to everyone's relief. I find her an hour later having a tequila shooting contest with a man at the open bar. She tells me she only had 9 shots, but I don't know if she was telling me the truth. From that point on she went around slurly insulting people. She asked me if was embarrassed by her seconds before looking at my dad, they've been divorced for over 25 years at this point, and saying, "Hey Richard? Wanna F?" He slowly slinked away from the table without saying a word. It culminated with her going around the reception saying the father of the bride had sexual assaulted her on the dance floor and she was going to get him for what he did. This is shortly before her going to the bathroom, pulling down her panties and sitting on the toilet, puking down the front of her dress and passing out on the bathroom stall floor with her underpants around her ankles covered in vomit. We had to cut a hole out of a garbage bag to put her head through and make it like a dress so we could get her in a car and not ruin the seats with vomit. To this day, despite the other 100 people or more who were there seeing the opposite, she still insists that the father of the bride had sexual assaulted her and she sends him nasty messages on Facebook. How I got a girl addicted to me. After my long relationship ended abruptly, I needed time alone to recover. Eventually, my friends urged me to start dating again. They thought it would be good for me to practice to regain my social skills. They were worried because I had become pretty isolated. I matched with a girl who was back home from college for the summer. She was interested in meeting up, even though she lived a bit far away. I wasn't really enthusiastic, but my friends encouraged me to go, just for the experience. They said it didn't mean I had to commit to anything. I want to emphasize that I was honest with her from the start. I told her I wasn't looking for anything serious. I'd just gotten out of something significant and needed time to explore. She was persistent and still wanted to meet. So, we decided to have a casual lunch at a sports bar. When I arrived, she looked quite different from her pictures. Her pictures seemed outdated, and I noticed she had tattoos that weren't in the photos. I wasn't attracted to her but was there for the experience. Throughout the lunch, she seemed extremely shy and awkward. Her hands were even shaking when she picked up her glass. I tried to make her feel more at ease by asking questions, but she gave very short answers. After an hour, it was clear she wasn't engaging with me. But I tried to be understanding because I knew what anxiety felt like. Then she handed me a book and said it was for me. I thanked her and asked about it, but she acted as if I should have known it was my favorite book. I corrected her, and we laughed it off. As we finished lunch, I hinted that I needed to leave to take care of my pets and do chores. She insisted on spending more time together and suggested going to a nearby park. This is where things took a strange turn. In broad daylight, we sat on a park bench. I tried to talk but still got one-word answers. Out of nowhere, she aggressively kissed me, catching me off guard. I was frozen and confused. A shy woman who hadn't said much was suddenly kissing me intensely. I didn't know how to react. Then a creepy guy walked by and started making inappropriate comments. I was beyond uncomfortable. I managed to get him to leave, but she just laughed. I told her I needed to leave, but she didn't seem to listen. She got close to me and asked if I found her attractive. I was nervous and just wanted to go home. She asked to come with me, but I firmly said no. When I got home, I felt shaken. I hadn't dated in a while, and this was definitely not normal. Later, she texted me for a second date. I was polite but honest, telling her I didn't feel a connection. She started sending me crazy texts, saying that I was the love of her life, that it was the greatest date she had ever gone on, and that she loved me more than she loved her own family. It raised my ego, but I still thought she was too weird for me. I didn't respond because her behavior was crossing boundaries. I wanted to let it play out to see how long she'd go on for. But she did this for multiple weeks, and I started worrying that she'd try to find me or something, so I just blocked her number and hoped I'd never see her again.
I admitted to my girlfriend that I pretend she is a giant cockroach when we have sex. Ever since I was a teenager I have had very intense fantasies about having tango with a giant roach. It started in 9th or 10th grade when we read The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. As I started to think more and more about the roach creature that the character had become, I started to imagine what it would be like if a woman turned into the roach instead. I found this idea very arousing. I would not be repulsed or frightened of her, as the characters in the story are. I would take care of her. Then my thoughts started to get intimate with the character. Eventually I sort of dropped the bit about her having been a human woman first, and I kind of imagined this fictionalized roach species. They are giant roaches, the size of a person, and have complete intelligence. I kind of over time conjured up an imaginary friend of sorts. She was one of these roaches and her name was Oktha. I would fantasize about her often. Whenever I touched myself I'd be imagining elaborate scenarios of me and Oktha making love. When I started to have actual tango, I found I could not outperform if I wasn't thinking of Oktha. So basically now, anytime I have tango with a woman, I am pretending that she is actually Oktha. Not just think about Oktha, I concentrate intently to visualize that I actually am doing Oktha. I don't want to think about the girl at all. There is only Oktha. Of course this tango can never be as exciting as my fully imaginary sessions with Oktha. There are things that her multiple appendages and antennae allow for that a human woman can never match. So anyways, I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend for about a year. 3 or 4 times I have tried to have sex with her and not pretend she is Oktha, but I just can't do it. So essentially every time we have tango I am imagining she is Oktha. I finally confided this to her the other day, and I was blown away by her reaction. I thought she might take it a bit badly at first, but that she'd get used to it. No. I have never seen such a look of disgust before. Outraged is not an understatement. She is not even returning my texts now. I am afraid she is actually going to break up with me and also that is going to tell people about Oktha. I don't know how I will face anyone. This is going to sound silly, but I also feel guilty about feeling shame, as if Oktha will be saddened by this, even though I know she is imaginary. I just don't know what to do at this point. When should you be worried about your partner's body count? My boyfriend and I have been together for 5 months now. He is likely the most gorgeous person I have ever met. Before getting together, we had been talking solely as friends for a very long time. After about 7 months, I made an advance and we decided to make it official. Now for reference, my boyfriend is on the autism spectrum. He has always been highly withdrawn and private person. He is extremely shelled off to everyone, so those 7 months of friendship were crucial. He has a single friend he talks to once a week, and speaks to no one else. He is a physics major and he is ridiculously smart, albeit not very socially adept. He has had a single ex before me. Now 10 days ago, I asked about his ex and he answered, but eventually he started asking about my past too. He had asked once before during the period of us being friends, but after me telling him that it's not something he should ask about and am not comfortable with it, he never mentioned it again. Now after he asked this time, I had to give him an answer. I told him the number of people I'd slept with. It's high, but it's not ridiculous. We were in bed when it happened. The moment I answer, he scoots away from me and looks at me with this incredulous look. When I ask him about it, he said it's nothing. Just surprising is all. I let it go for the moment, but the next 4 days, he refused intimacy when I initiated. He never ever does this. I'm usually all over him and he adores it. I figured he'd get over it, and I should let it sit. The issue is for almost a week he was completely physically withdrawn. He however constantly reassured me saying you're your own person, you have every right to a past, I don't have a right to judge you for it such and such. He loves weighted blankets, perhaps a characteristic of the autism, and he would ask me frequently to lie on top of him. He never does that anymore. This is far more hurtful than him denying me intimacy, because this was something that he did without thinking much. Beyond that, he also stopped public hand-holding, playful biting, and other fun or cute things we would do previously. I talked to my own therapist, discussed this distance, and she tells me maybe Hess afraid of telling me Hess uncomfortable with it, for fear of upsetting me. She told me I must make it clear to him that I will not resent him even if he judges me or hates me for it and am willing to work through it for him. On the 6th day, I try talking to him about it. He looks at me in a way that I can only describe as petrified. He apologizes profusely for the distance, and assures me that he loves me and that he has no right to be upset about this. He did this, but he would never even begin to say that yes, your past bothers me, let's talk about it. Now here's what hurts the absolute most. After scaring him with the conversation, the next day he offered to be intimate again. In a moment of weakness, and having missed intimacy, I agreed, and we slept together. He looked so uncomfortable and almost terrified throughout the entire thing. He insisted he enjoyed it, but I know for a fact that he did it to appease me, and to artificially mend the distance. 3 days from then and we haven't done anything else, and he has never asked me to lie on top of him again as he used to. This may seem insignificant, but the weighted blanket thing he does is something he doesn't think twice about, so since he doesn't know I miss this behavior, he doesn't try mending it, which signals to me that he, obviously, isn't over it. I talked to my therapist about him looking terrified during, and she told me that it was definitely a way of appeasing me, since he likely felt I was angry at him. She told me it was likely a product of childhood trauma. For reference, he was beaten as a child and into his teen years, so she suggested this was maybe a product of him learning to be subservient the moment he is confronted by an authority figure. I feel terrible and I know he feels terrible. I don't know how to help him.
How has being the least favored child affected you? To provide some context, I am one of 4 siblings in my family. I have 2 older sisters and a younger brother. Overall, my parents are wonderful people who prioritize us and provide a good life for us. We often joke around with labels for each other, like the golden child or eldest daughter. In my case, I've jokingly been called the neglected child because I received the least attention from my parents. While I took it lightly and didn't want to be seen as dramatic, deep down, it did affect me in subtle ways. I've noticed that my dad has a bit of a preference for my older sister, even though he denies it. It's sort of an ongoing joke within our family, and I never let it hurt me. However, as I've grown older over the past 3 years, I've realized that my dad and I don't really have any shared interests or activities that we bond over. It feels like he finds me somewhat uninteresting. Now, let me be clear, my dad does love me tremendously, and he has done countless things for me that I'll forever be grateful for. However, I can't help but feel like he indirectly chooses my other siblings over me. I've attempted to engage in things he likes, such as the same music, shows, and interests, in hopes of bonding with him. I've tried to have conversations about these topics, but it's invariably my sister who shares a deeper connection with him in these areas. I began noticing this discrepancy around the age of 10, and as a result, it triggered severe people-pleasing tendencies within me. I unknowingly developed a need for validation from males, which led to unfortunate experiences of harassment from multiple individuals. It almost feels as though my dad loves me but doesn't particularly like me. We share some moments of laughter, but I struggle to recall any instance where it was just him and me having our own fun. Such moments are incredibly rare. Sometimes, it seems like my dad has lost hope in me, though I can't pinpoint why. I have constantly strived to make him happy, to be recognized in any way, or even just to be noticed. Unfortunately, it feels like he often doesn't listen when I speak. He interrupts me, doesn't pay attention, or abruptly shifts his focus to one of my siblings. Consequently, my dad knows very little about me or my interests. I can't shake the feeling that I will never be enough for my dad, no matter how hard I try. I question what is wrong with me and why I don't possess whatever qualities my siblings have that resonate with him. This burden weighs heavily on me because my dad is genuinely a good person who is trying his best. When he returns from work, he immediately asks about one of my siblings, inadvertently making me feel like an afterthought. Often, I believe my dad sees me as a mere joke, an additional child whose purpose is mainly to provide for and fulfill obligations. As the only unplanned child among the four of us, this perception is exacerbated. I've completely altered my personality just to catch his attention or engage in conversation. Sadly, he has never indicated that he's proud of me. When I try to share my accomplishments, he dismisses them and brings up past mistakes I made long ago. Merely being in my dad's presence becomes uncomfortable because I've grown tired of initiating conversations that ultimately lead to me being ignored. This constant rejection has deeply impacted my self-esteem. All I desire is to spend quality time with him. Despite feeling guilt for writing and believing these thoughts, it seems like nothing significant would change if I were not his child or if I simply didn't exist. I feel as though I hold little value or actual presence to him. In summary, my dad finds me uninteresting, refusing to acknowledge me despite my efforts to change who I am just to grab his attention. Witnessing his strong bonds with my siblings while having no meaningful connection with me has severely affected my personal growth and self-worth since childhood.
My husband is a homosexual and cheated on me throughout our entire marriage. When I found him naked in bed with a man, I told his homophobic mom. My ex and I dated for 3 years before deciding to get married. I thought he was the one for me, but there was no way I could be his ideal partner because I am a woman and he is gay. He hid this from me the entire time we were together, and I only found out because I caught him cheating. He had brought the guy over and effed up on my bed that I had paid for in the apartment I was renting. Honestly, I wore the pants in this relationship. We had a huge fight where he admitted that he was never attracted to me in a romantic way, but he wanted the luxury of having kids and a normal life. I didn't care that he was gay, but I will never forgive him for leading me on so he could use me to have kids. I was just his baby maker and he was sleeping with however many men while keeping me in this loveless marriage. I didn't realize just how miserable I was. I mean, he never even took me on dates and the intimacy was frequent because he was trying to impregnate me. I'm pissed that my life has been turned around like this, but there's nothing worse than dealing with his family at the moment. I could handle the cheating and the divorce process, but his mother is the interfering mother-in-law from hell. Not being related to her anymore is another plus to leaving. Basically, his family doesn't believe in divorce, so when my ex went and snitched on me about splitting up, they quickly blew up my phone telling me I was making a huge mistake and I need to talk this out with him. His mom even showed up to my apartment to get me to change my mind. She talked about how I'm being childish and marriage is about commitment, forgiveness, and working through problems, etc. It became apparent that my ex didn't tell his family that he cheated. Instead, he told his mom that I was divorcing him because we weren't having intimacy often enough for me. I told her the truth, but she didn't care. She just said that men are just that way, and if I wanted to have sex more and for him not to stray, that I should make myself more attractive to my husband and be a better wife. I tried to be patient with her up until this point. From all the verbal abuse I was dealing with and my ex still bringing guys over to my apartment to sleep with them, her telling me that was the last straw. I said something purely out of bad judgment, and while I do regret it, there was nothing holding me back from telling her everything. I told her that the only thing that would make me more attractive to my ex would be an intimacy change operation, and that I hoped he and his boyfriend adopted her some grandchildren so she could finally shut the hell up about it. She was shocked and I swear she nearly fainted. She couldn't say another word to me and just left. It was clear this was going to turn into a huge family drama and he'll probably be disowned. Well, my ex did end up calling me, sobbing, that I ruined his life out of spite. I do feel bad for him that his parents are such awful people and there were just no good outcomes for him, but I also feel like he made his own bed here. I definitely could have gone about this a better way, but it also wasn't fair that he put the entire blame on me and wasn't helping me deal with his family. I had actually sent him screenshots on iMessage of everything his family had texted me and he put the haha reaction over every single one. Now, I'm not saying he deserved getting disowned, but he definitely deserved some bad karma.
What are some guy secrets girls don't know about? Many men have anxiety and/or depression, but we will not talk about and will get moderately annoyed at you for bringing it up. If we haven't carried in all the shopping in one go, we haven't done it right. I don't know if other guys feel this too, but I'm always afraid of accidentally making women feel uncomfortable in my presence. For example, when I happen to walk in the same direction as a woman in front of me for a while, and am not even interested in women in the first place. If you compliment my appearance, I will probably remember forever. I still remember when a girl in college told me I looked nice with my beard when I first grew it out. I've had a beard ever since. We have the magical power of thinking about nothing. After a shower, we have no problem drying our balls and face with the same towel. Most of the time we try to dry the face first, then the sack. But sometimes we have to go back to the face. We just hope we use an uncontaminated part of the towel. It's not uncommon for us to genuinely think you're beautiful without any makeup.
Today I effed up by telling my new boyfriend that I was in love with him. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 9 months. He seemed like such a good man. I would have never thought he could destroy me like this. All my past relationships were pretty toxic and I always seemed to get involved with insecure men with anger issues. When I met my current boyfriend, I couldn't believe how kind and patient he was. He was so sensitive and understanding and we talked about our feelings and our past all the time and he was always open about how he felt about me. He would text me sweet messages every single morning and night, and said that he had never felt this way about anyone else and that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. My feelings grew for him every time we saw each other, and I felt so comfortable telling him anything about myself or how I was feeling. We shared so much, and I still can't believe he was able to just throw me away like I was nothing. I could have never anticipated him causing me this pain. Everything happened the other night this week. He had a work party that was taking place on this fancy boat. We had a lot to drink and he had driven us there, so by the end of the night we decided to Uber home together. We walked out of the party, and we were at the front of the boat just holding each other and staring at the beautiful view of the cityscape. The summer night was warm but we squeezed each other tight and kissed deeply. Everything just felt so perfect, so right in the moment. I stopped kissing him for a moment, and I looked into his eyes and told him that I loved him. I could just burst out in tears when I remembered this moment, and I wish I'd just forget it for the rest of my life. As soon as the word love escaped my mouth, my boyfriend's entire face dropped, and he literally pushed me off him. All he said was, "Why would you say that?" With this grossed out look on his face. I started getting nervous and stumbled over my words as I tried to explain to him how I felt. I told him I was sorry if I made him uncomfortable. He made a grumbling noise and said that it was manipulative for someone to say I love you before the other person had said it. He asked me why I was trying to make him look like an a-hole. At this point I felt like crying. I was humiliated and I said I'm sorry I said it in the first place. I shouldn't have said it. I did love him, but I didn't know what he wanted me to say in that moment. That's when he started to get really upset and even raised his voice. There were a couple of other partygoers on the boat deck near us, and they turned to look at his outburst. He started yelling at me that I shouldn't have even said it if I didn't really mean it. I just cried and kept my head down as he went on to call me crazy, weird, and a liar. He said I could take the Uber alone and to leave him alone for a while. He then stormed off, and left me there alone and crying with a bunch of strangers staring at me. It was one of the most humiliating moments of my life and I don't even know if it's worth it to reach out to him. I'll never tell another man I love them again for as long as I live.
Evil stepmother wants my baby. I'm 29 years old and my fiancé is 37. I met my fiancé when I moved to Italy after graduating medical school. We have a 5-month-old daughter together. My father is a horrible dad, left my mom and me and has been very inconsistent. He married my stepmother when I was young and she has never liked me and she was also never able to have kids. So when I gave birth, my mom's side of the family flew over to Italy to visit and meet my daughter. However, neither my dad nor his wife made an effort to contact me or try to visit me. So 2 weeks ago they turned up unannounced claiming to be in the area on vacation and wanted to meet my daughter. I let them come to my house to see my daughter. My daughter was getting hungry so I began to breastfeed her. That's when my stepmother said breastfeeding would have to stop soon. I was confused and asked her why she thinks that. Then she said it would be hard for my daughter to make a smooth transition from breastfeeding to bottle when she moves in with them. This got me even more confused and I asked her what she was talking about. Then she began to show me pictures of a baby room she and my father set up. They wanted custody of my daughter. I just stare at her but she carries on. My stepmother began claiming that the age gap between myself and Marco is unhealthy for a child to grow up with, saying it was obvious I needed help and she was happy too, and mostly that I was obviously more bothered about working than staying home with my baby so I should just let her have my daughter. She then said she's not able to breastfeed so I should probably stop that as soon as I could. I tell her she can't be serious and think I'm giving her my baby and she tells me to calm down. She told me she doesn't plan on taking full custody but she could provide a much calmer and stabler home and that I could always visit. She said it's what my daughter deserves. Marco pushed everyone out and made sure my daughter and I were alright. Since then I've been really weirded out and have been getting texts from my father saying I need to let my stepmother prove herself as a good caregiver. My stepmother has been sending loads of photos of the nursery she has made and is insisting I give my daughter to her. I really don't understand what's going on. Of course, I'm not giving my evil stepmother my baby. Ida for stealing the cat I own? So I, 21F, have a beautiful brown cat, Midge. She's still a baby and is 10 months old. I found her outside of my work when she was about 2 to 3 months old and immediately fell in love with her. We've had the best time together and her being my first pet since moving out makes me even happier. My cousin Tanya 15F visits me a lot since we live in the same city and I enjoy having her. She also really likes cats, but since her father is allergic they don't have any at home. She really loves coming over to see Midge and I'm glad to be able to provide her with Midge's presence. School recently started, and before I go back to being a full-time student I've been having to work almost 45 hours a week to afford my lifestyle for the next couple months. Since I was busy I let her have the responsibility of taking care of Midge, such as feeding her, cleaning her little box, etc. It was going really well and I didn't have the chance to take her home since I was going to be at work. I gave her my spare key to lock up and scheduled an Uber to take her to her house. When I came home 8 hours later, Midge was gone. I called Tanya and she swore Midge was home when she left, but after a couple hours my brother called asking when I gave Midge to Tanya. I was confused and he sent me a SS of Tanya kissing Midge on her Instagram story. I knew then she blocked me from being able to see it and was shocked she would do this to me, as well as lie. I had a spare key to their house and went right over and took Midge back when they weren't home. When I got home, Tanya called screaming at me over the phone telling me I broke into their house and stole her property. I laughed and asked how Midge was hers. She told me since she took care of her she deserved her since I wasn't home, and she had to save Midge. Her parents were also pretty upset, since I did go into their home without permission and told me I didn't deserve Midge from what Tanya told them. They told me they decided my uncle will take allergy medication for Midge and I needed to give her back. Of course I said no. Tanya ended up calling my mom, lying to her that I abused Midge. My mom called angry, telling me how I could do this to Midge and if I don't give her to Tanya and her family, she will disown me. Tanya texted me this weekend that if I apologize she might forgive me. Her parents have been texting me all weekend they'll press charges since I did go into their home, and will take Midge then. I don't know what to do. I love Midge so much and my mom gave my aunt and uncle permission to go to my apartment and take her. I know this because Tanya texted me that I'm assuming to scare me. I am. I'm so scared one of these days I'm going to come home and Midge is going to be gone again. My brother and dad think I am an a-hole since I did go into their home without permission and acted out without trying to solve it maturely. So, am I the a-hole for stealing my cat? Verdict, not the a-hole. Edit. I called and left a voicemail to my landlord and gave a brief explanation of the situation. I am upset since I asked for him to change the locks and he refused. Legally he was able to since as a college student my mom's name is on the lease and he needed her permission. Of course he called and she refused. I'm scared she's gonna come tomorrow but I do have a friend I can drop Midge off before work. Edit 2. Hi everyone. I want to say thank you so much for your input and want to put you all at ease and let you know I set up an appointment for Midge to get microchipped this Saturday on my day off. Smile. I also did order a small security camera that covers my whole living room / front door. I'm still requesting my landlord to change locks but he still has his foot down. I can't move out since where I live is pretty hard to get a place and basically everything requires credit which I do not have. Getting to it, the only negative side is Tanya has been posting pictures of Midge on Instagram claiming I stole her and have received lots of messages from her friends and classmates from school trying to cancel and dox me. That I don't really care about. Her parents have called giving me second chances to reconsider before they press charges which I highly doubt they would do. My mom and I aren't talking and I don't want to go NC with her since I love my mom very much. I'm sure after all of this resolves we're gonna have a mature talk about how she acted and what was wrong.
Threaten my friend with revenge porn? I'll ruin your whole damn life. Some dumb mother ever thought they could hide behind anonymity while threatening my friend, and it only took me 45 minutes to destroy their life. My good friend sent some erotic pictures to someone she thought she could trust. Now, I'm not here to judge but she only knew his first name, screen name, the town he claimed to live in and his job. At the time he said that he was traveling a lot for work and it happened that he would be staying near to her house and that they should make plans to meet up. In the lead up to their first date, my friend suspected a few red flags and she became nervous, so she backed out, but the dude then threatened to publish the picture she had sent him online. Incidentally, I am a lawyer so the minute she showed me his threatening texts, I jumped at the chance to revenge my friend. So, after a few searches later and the gathering of any pictures he sent her of his PP and anything that identified him, I found his online handle. This led me to a TikTok page, which led me to an Instagram page with his name on it. From there, I found his LinkedIn which showed his place of work, which also matched the images seen on the other social media platforms. I noticed that he seemed to wear the same type of branded polo in all his pictures so it was credible. But I didn't stop there. More searches revealed the email address of his CEO, VP of HR, Operations Manager and PR Manager, so I did what any friend would do, and fired all emails on behalf of my client containing screenshots of him threatening revenge porn, snippets of conversation attached to his username and images he sent to her while wearing his company's branded apparel. I also sent them links that explained how I knew him, alongside pictures he sent her of his motorbike and license plate, as further proof that it was him. And it got better because I then included screenshots of him discussing a workplace incident that was timestamped with pictures of dialogue discussing how he had intimacy with an ex at his place of work. Even worse, how he was planning to have intimacy with her in his office. I then included pictures he sent her of his work laptop with his entire Outlook calendar, along with priority information, which he sent to prove that he was busy, along with other pictures of his workplace that featured non-consenting employees. I love a touch of drama, so I just had to inform his employer that I would be forwarding all this information to the police, and since he had indicated his travel plan to the US, that I would make sure that the Federal Bureau of Investigation would also be told. After all, at the time my client was a citizen on US soil, and these threats constituted a federal crime. I made it clear to them that should this a whole continue to be employed by them, and continue their plans to send him to the US for work, I would ensure that he would get a warm welcome from local law enforcement at the welcome gate. It would be easy for me to do this as one of the assistant US attorneys for this region is a law school buddy of mine. I know where he lives, and will be contacting his local authorities tomorrow.
My husband demanded me to get a honker job before our wedding so I called it off. My wedding is in a month and I'm calling it off. My ex-husband has been manipulating me this whole time. I know it sounds impulsive and I suppose it is, but there's a good reason behind it. My ex-husband, we'll call him Leno, is no longer the man I thought I was marrying, and I'm honestly not sure if he ever was. We met through my brother, who set us up on a blind date 2 years ago. My brother met him at work and apparently they just clicked. He thought Leno and I would be a perfect match. The date went well and Leno thought it'd be a good idea to go on one again. While on the second date, I thought it'd be a good idea to make a few things clear, in case this would lead to a long-term relationship, which it did. I explained that I wasn't interested in being with a religious person, someone who wanted children, etc., basically anything that could cause problems in the future. One thing I mentioned in particular was that if I wasn't his type he should be forward about it, because I wasn't interested in changing anything permanently. I'd also like to add that we discussed medical problems, because I am on medication for a psychological disorder that causes drastic weight fluctuations. He agreed with all my views, even saying that I was exactly his type. He said he didn't mind the weight fluctuations either, because it didn't change my appearance all too much. Which is true. Well, we've been engaged for 6 months now, and last week Liar sat me down and told me not to freak out. I listened. He explained that he wasn't entirely honest with me, saying that he was a Christian and wanted children. He then continued by saying that he thought I would have changed my mind about these things, but that ultimately we could work through it together in counseling after the wedding. That wasn't where I freaked out, because I wasn't given the chance to. He didn't stop at the stuff mentioned beforehand. He gave me the following list of things he didn't like about me and thought I'd have to change. I'd have to go off the medication, because he didn't like that sometimes I'd be easy to pick up and other times not so much. Apparently this was embarrassing in front of friends. 2. I'd have to start wearing makeup. I have a skin condition that doesn't allow for it. 3. Dye my hair brown and get it chemically straightened every few weeks. He didn't like the curls and was even willing to pay for it. Yay. 4. Get a honker job, and more things of the like. I stayed quiet and said that he'd have to give me a moment. I've been staying at my friend's place for the past week. Leno doesn't know, but he did get my parents, who I haven't spoken to since I was 14, to call me. Apparently, he's had contact with them the entire relationship. Knowing full well what they put me through. I honestly just don't know what to do anymore. I'm leaving. But I'm not sure how to tell him. Funny date results you have witnessed. A while ago I had a dude sit down at my bar. He looked a little off, so I asked him, "You alright, bud? How's your day been going?" And he told me that he got out of a relationship a while ago and this was his first day since and that he was pretty nervous. I told him that he got it, he looked good, stay seated at the bar and I've got your back. I honestly wanted to be his wingman, because he and I were pretty much in the same situation at that point in life. We talk about his date. Turned out it was a Tinder date, so we talked about what she looked like and what he hoped she'd be like. He told me, among things, that he is really not attracted to big women. Just doesn't work for him. Fair enough, for some people that's a no-go, I guess. As his back is facing the door, I ask him if he'd mind showing me her Tinder profile, or at least some pictures, so I can keep an eye out and give him a heads up when she's there. He does and I do. He's on his 4th pint. He came in early because he was nervous and thought a pint or 2 would settle that. Then she also ran late, so a pint or 2 turned into 4. What's a man gonna do? As I see a girl that looks like the girl he showed me, but a lot, well, bigger. So I give him the look at the door nod. He turns around a little, sees her, mumbles cuck, turned around and asks, "Pour me a shot of vodka, quickly, please," and I do. They did stay at my bar and I have to hand it to the dude. He handled it well. Sure, he was not attracted to girls her size, but apart from ordering a shot of vodka upon her arrival, he was pretty chill about it. The girl was being really flirty and a little eager. He just acted like he didn't notice all the advances she made. They had 2 or 3 drinks when he straight up said something along the lines of, "I'm going to be honest about this. You are a nice person and cool to talk to, but I don't see this become any more than that. Hope you had fun." I did, but I'm going to go home now. And that was it. My wife dropped a bombshell. I'm 25, married, and I am a dad. When I first started dating my now wife, our intimate life was amazing. It was dirty and crazy, anywhere and at any time. But as the relationship progressed, the lovemaking became stale and my wife's intimate drive seemed to drop to almost non-existent. The lovemaking now, for lack of better words, is boring and stale. There's no real passion to it, no romance, and it just feels so mechanical. If she isn't in the mood, there is no chance I can sway her. No candlelit home-cooked dinners, rom-coms and massages can change her mind. But if she's in the mood, it's then and now. It doesn't matter if I'm in the middle of something. She knows I'll drop what I'm doing, but even then, it's right to it. No before action, no hands, no mouths, no romance, no passion. It's always just a quickie. Once all is said and done and she's happy and satisfied, I can usually expect nothing for the next 3 or 4 days or even weeks. It is a complete shift from how things used to be. I never really knew why things changed. That was until last night. We had a party, and after everyone left she decided she wanted to play 21 questions. It started off innocent enough, but she'd had a few drinks, so for one of my questions I tested my luck and decided to ask, "Why don't we have the kind of love making we did earlier in our relationship?" Her response wasn't what I was expecting. She said, "I never had a high intimate drive. I've never been crazy or dirty. I just did whatever you wanted at the start because I wanted you and didn't want you deciding it wasn't going to work out between us. When I knew you weren't going anywhere, I didn't really have to keep it up." So I said, "So all of it was just a ploy to have me?" That's when she said, "Well, your best friend wanted you to. She never told you, but I knew she was going to soon. If she did, I knew you'd be with her. It wasn't much of a competition. She was better looking. You knew her for over 10 years, so you were already very close. And we both know she had a high intimate drive too. You were both love-making addicts. You'd have chosen her in an instant. I didn't have much of a chance, but I wanted you. So I made a move before she did, gave you exactly what you wanted, and when she wasn't in the picture anymore I didn't have to worry. So I said, so you knew the whole time? She shrugged and said, yeah, she told me she wanted to pull you aside and tell you how she felt about you when she felt the time was right, so I got to you first, but what does it matter now? It's all in the past, she's in her own relationship, and you two don't even speak anymore anyway, we're married, have a house and a daughter, I've got what I wanted so I'm happy. I didn't really know how to respond, so I just let it slide and we kept asking each other questions until she finally fell asleep, but it made me think to myself, my wife was right, I'd have chosen my best friend without hesitation. I'd always had feelings for her, I still do, but I was in an emotionally dark place and I didn't want to risk jeopardizing our friendship or making things awkward if she didn't feel the same way about me. If I'd known she felt the same way things would have been very different. Now it all made sense to me, why my friend of now 15 years had suddenly become so distant, why she disliked my wife so much, and why we rarely ever see each other. As for my wife, she's right, it's been 8 years, we're married, have a house, have a kid, my best friend has moved on, she's got her own life, and although I've always had feelings for her, it's been too long to say she even feels the same way. I'm not the best husband, but I've tried to be, I work hard, make sure all my family's needs are met before my own, but at some point I decided if my needs weren't being met at all, I'd satisfy them on my own, and as bad as it sounds, I don't feel as bad for cheating on my wife, I know two wrongs don't make a right, I'm not trying to justify it. But it does make me wonder what things would have been like, would I have been happier with my best friend? Or was my wife right? Am I just a love-making addict, and would I have eventually cheated on my best friend too?
Today I effed up by throwing my steak out a window. Wife's perspective. I had just gotten a brand new job that I was really excited about. So I was delighted when my boss, who I had been trying to establish a rapport with, invited me and my husband over to her home for dinner. Well, mostly delighted. My husband is. Well, he's the sweetest, but he has a history of doing really dumb things. Because of this, I was worried about him coming along. By the time the day of the dinner arrived, I had become so anxious about it that I actually floated the idea to my boss that I wasn't sure if he would be able to make it. She was clearly taken aback and responded, "Oh no. I really hope he can. I have a dinner for 3 all ready to go." Upon seeing her dismay, I assured her that I was sure he would find a way to be there. Well, we made it over to her apartment on time and things actually started out really, really well. It was actually just the 3 of us, which surprised me somewhat but made me a little less concerned about my husband, as crowds really tend to bring out his unpredictability. I had just started to finally relax and was a couple bites into a deliciously cooked steak when things took a horrible turn. My boss had just stepped into the kitchen to check on dessert when I noticed something odd out of the corner of my eye. It was one of those things where you know something strange is happening in your peripheral vision, but you're not sure what. You have to look over and focus your gaze to really comprehend it. I look over at my husband and see him holding his steak in his hand, hovering it just an inch or two above his plate. Before I had a chance to fully comprehend what I was seeing and verbalize something that might have saved all of us from the coming horror, he threw his steak, baseball style, across the room straight into the dining room window. It hit the window, making a loud noise, and slowly slid down. Now my husband does dumb things, I already told you that, but he's not a crazy person. Usually when he does dumb things I at least understand what he's thinking. There's usually some semblance of rhyme or reason to the dumb things. In this case I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't wrap my head around what was going on. I stared at him with what must have been the most confused look, and watched as he stared back at me, an expression of utter horror painted across his face. I couldn't make any sense of what was happening, but I also didn't have time to try. I heard the footsteps of my boss coming to see what the sound was. It suddenly sunk in that it didn't matter why he did what he did. He did it and we were all about to come face to face with a very awkward situation. I could feel the anger flush through my face. For a brief moment I contemplated trying to help my husband get out of this. But no. This was his dumb poop bed and he could lie in it. Not like there was any possible recovery anyway. My boss walks in and sees the steak lying on the windowsill. There's the effing longest most awkward pause where we all just sit there frozen. My boss and I are staring at my husband, forcing the ball into his court, as the cringe just hangs in the air like an ocean fog. He finally manages to mutter some incoherent garbage about being a klutz and even tries to get me to back him up. I leave him out to dry in the deafening silence. He makes a poor attempt at cleaning the window and retrieves his steak. Mercifully, my boss asks me a question about work and we both dive eagerly into conversation. We all resume the rest of the evening pretending that he isn't there, a sort of unspoken agreement by all that this is the only way to move forward. As soon as we got to the car, my husband turned into a nervous chatterbox trying to explain himself. Turns out the dumb SS didn't like the way his steak was cooked, rare, and, get this, he thought the window was open. My husband, ladies and gentlemen, tried to chuck his steak out a 3-story window. He thought that was a reasonable solution to being served an undercooked steak. Now, let's say the window was open and the steak was gone. She returns a minute later. Is he just going to tell her he devoured it?
As a teacher, have you ever been pressured to fix grades? I'd say about every other year. I get some feedback from parents or students to change a grade. Last June took the cake. I had a student. He did okay. When he did the work about half the time. He was late every day. He had a bit of an attitude. He is required to pass the class to graduate. I called him up several times over the semester to discuss his grade, and these discussions were generally ignored. I said, if you do your work from now until spring break, I'll let you make up the missing work so you can pass with a good grade. Nothing changed. No problems for me. When all was said and done, he had a solid 60.3% going into the final. I told him the final was pass/fail for him. Pretty much any fail would drop his grade, and he would not be allowed to graduate. He says, no big deal, I've got it. Well, he didn't quite have it. He scored 39% on the final. He failed. He comes in to see me the day after the final, the day before the grade is due. Can I make up some work? Can I do some extra credit? Is there anything I can do? I reply, no, I'm sorry. I gave you several chances to make up your missing work. You ignored them. I told you it was do or die on the final. You died. Now, your counselor will suggest summer school. You are smart enough to take this class at the community college and get both college and high school grades for this. I know you were planning on community college anyway. That would be the smart way to go. But I have family coming from out of town. Okay, I need to pass. I feel bad about that, because you are not passing. He leaves, and about 30 minutes later, the head dean comes in and says, his father is a good friend of mine. Is there anything we can do? I say, sorry, I gave him a chance to make up the work. He refused to do that. For me, this is finished. We chat a bit more, and he takes off. About 15 minutes later, there is a commotion outside my room. The kid is there with his mother and a security guard. The guard says, they say you have a meeting scheduled with them now. I say, I don't have any meeting scheduled today. I don't need to talk to them. This discussion is over. I close the door and the guard escorts them from campus. About 30 minutes later, the AP in charge of my department is at my door, asking, what's going on with George? He failed. Is there anything he can do? No, and to be honest, I don't like being questioned about this. He failed. That's that. I am not questioning you. I just want to know what's going on. I then said, and that is a question. He failed. You can support me or not, but that isn't going to change. We are in California, only teachers are allowed to assign or change grades. He left, and as he was leaving, I said, you know, if he put in half this effort this semester, he would have passed. It bothers me that everyone is coming down to discuss this with me. I've been teaching 30 years. I kind of know what I am doing. I go off to take care of some paperwork, and return to my room 15 minutes later, and the principal is waiting outside my room. I enter my room and he comes in with me. I close the door, and he says, George is failing. His mother is in my office saying you won't speak to her. Why won't you let him pass? I say, well, I won't speak to her because they lied to a security guard to get to my room, and there really isn't anything to talk about. He failed the class. You can review his grades online. I'll be honest with you, I really resent you questioning me about this. I assign grades based on how they do on their work. I don't need to rationalize my grades to the dean, the AP, and to you. Either I know how to do my job, and you let me do it, or I don't know how to do my job and you put me on a corrective program so I can do it to your satisfaction. This backroom questioning of the grades I assign isn't right, and isn't how we are supposed to be doing our job. Now, do you think I know how to do my job? He said, yes, but... I interrupted him, then let me do it. I am willing to listen to input if you know how I can do it better than I am doing it now, but this really can't continue like this. We need to have a discussion at this school about what is appropriate for administrative interaction. This isn't the time or the place, but this can't continue. He apologized and left. I come to find out that the kid threatened to beat me down if he sees me again. He's 5 feet 11 inches 145 pounds. I am 6 feet 5 inches 250 pounds. I wish him luck with that.
I gave my husband the same treatment and he's crying like a baby. I purposefully ignored what my husband told me he wanted for Father's Day. He's now ignoring me and won't accept my apologies. Me and my husband have been together for the past 9 years. We have 2 kids, a 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. For Mother's Day all I wanted was a free day. I wanted my husband to take the kids out somewhere for the day so I could be home alone and relax. Instead, he got me and the kids tickets to have a fun day out. And it was fun, and me and the kids had a good time, but it irked me that he gave me the exact opposite of what I'd asked for. For Father's Day my husband also wanted a free day so he could stay home and play games all day. He plays games all the time with his friends. He'll get home from work, maybe spend the time between then and dinner with the kids before going up to his office to game for a few hours with friends. Instead, I got him and the kids cards for an arcade an hour away with a ton of tokens. I gave him the cards during dinner on Saturday so he and the kids could leave early and spend all day playing with them. I got my free day and he and the kids got to make a lot of memories together. He and I got into a fight when the kids went to bed. He was angry that I ignored what he wanted for Father's Day. I was angry that he didn't see that he'd done the same thing to me on Mother's Day. He's been ignoring me since and won't accept my apologies. I ignored my husband's wish to have a free day of Father's Day and got him and the kids a day out because he did the same thing to me on Mother's Day, and now he won't stop ignoring me or accept my apologies. We're in the process of getting a divorce.
Computer technicians, what's the most bizarre thing that you have found on a customer's computer? I got involved in regaining access to a notebook PC that had belonged to my boss's friend who had recently committed self-deletion. The computer was his work PC and the deceased person's boss or business partner was looking for something that had been stored on it, but they were vague about what they were looking for. The drive wasn't encrypted, so it was pretty trivial to blank out the password for the administrator and enable the account so that I could log in. I reset the passwords for the rest of the accounts and went looking to see if the data was still there or if I might need to attempt some file recovery on the hard drive. What was weird is that there were multiple local accounts on the PC and none of them looked like they had been used much. Normally, people have crap all over their desktops, bookmarks, etc. This PC just really didn't look like it had been used much at all, so I was suspecting that the account and user profile the deceased had been using had been deleted. What I did find was illegal child films in the pictures folder. Not hidden at all. The thumbnails were set to extra large so there wasn't much mistaking what I was seeing, even without opening individual files. I reported the find to the police and had to show an officer what I found. When I informed the mother-in-law about the finding and police report, she seemed surprisingly unfazed, like she was expecting us to find the child films. Afterward, my coworkers and I concluded that the deceased ended himself because his child films habits had been discovered or strongly suspected and that mother-in-law wanted this evidence discovered after he ended himself.
Ever wonder why you're not losing weight? Here's why. This is for everyone maintaining a calorie deficit and gaining weight or staying the same. People confuse weight loss and fat loss. You want to lose fat, not weight. While weight is an indication of progress, it is not the most accurate way to measure fat loss. Determining your body fat percent would be more accurate, but that can be expensive and impractical for most people. Even then, it's not 100% accurate, but it can still be an indication of progress. What I do in addition to weight is taking measurements. I use a tape measure and take my thigh, hips, waist, chest and arm measurements. That way if your weight stays the same or increases while your measurements decrease, you know that it's most likely not due to an increase in body fat. However, if your waist size increases due to bloating but your hips lose a 1 centimeter or 2, you don't go into panic mode. I use skin marks like moles or scars to ensure that I measure the same place every week, and use the same tape measure every time. Now a few questions to ask yourself regarding your weight standstill/gain. First off, be 100% honest with yourself. Are you absolutely sure about your eating and/or exercise habits? If you're eating something and not logging it, the calories still count. The small things you omit add up quickly. I learned this the hard way. Secondly, consider habits. How's your water intake and sleep? Just because something doesn't have a calorie-related impact doesn't mean it doesn't impact your body functions, and your body functions impact your health and weight. Thirdly, are you sure it's not medical? While I don't think this should be used as an excuse for bad habits, it is a valid factor to consider. Don't do something to try and lose weight if it's to the detriment of your overall health. If you think there could be a medical cause, get it checked out. Lastly, is this impacting your mental health negatively? I've been at a point where weighing myself got obsessive and started impacting other areas of my life, and in the end, it's not worth it. If the numbers are getting too much, take a step back. Stop logging calories, stop weighing yourself, and just focus on healthy habits. See a therapist if you need to. Sorting out some mental health stuff has had such an improvement on my life overall, and that includes physical health. Other reasons for weight gain except for body fat increase include retained water from salty foods, also known as water weight, retained water from carbs, increased muscle mass, and as muscles are more dense than fat, your weight will increase. Maybe you need to go to the bathroom, the clothes you're wearing weigh more than what you wore last week, and lastly, your menstrual cycle. I weigh anywhere from 2 to 6 pounds more when on my period. I just think sometimes we get so caught up in the numbers and calories we forget about the bigger picture and non-scale victories. How are you feeling? More confident? Stronger? Able to walk further? Eating a new vegetable? Sleeping better? Great. Your wellness is improving, and that's already a win.
What's the dumbest solution you've seen a superior officer suggest to a minor inconvenience? A friend of mine who served in the Navy shared this tale with me. During his time on a ship, he had the role of OPS, which meant overseeing the smooth running of various ship departments and ensuring orders were executed. One morning, at around 7 a.m., he woke up and headed to the mess hall for breakfast. As he sat down to eat, he noticed a goddamn sunbeam shining directly onto his face through a window. Naturally, he raised his hand to block the sunlight and avoid it shining in his eyes. But something odd happened when he looked at a person sitting nearby who had also raised their hand to shield themselves from the sunbeam. There was now an empty space between them where neither person's hand had been before. Realizing that if he moved just 2 effing inches, neither him nor anyone else would have to bother with blocking out that goddamn sunbeam anymore, my friend had what could only be described as an epiphany. Instead of simply moving over himself, why not call over an officer of the deck, OOD, some higher-ranking officer who could make decisions on his behalf? He explained what was going on and asked if they could change course slightly so that everyone wouldn't have to deal with that pesky sunbeam anymore, but all this got him was an incredulous look from said OOD, as if my friend had just suggested something completely absurd. Unfazed by this reaction though, my buddy simply replied, "Yeah dude, can we move it?" The OOD laughed it off and walked away, dismissing this suggestion like it was nothing more than some stupid joke, and so unfortunately for everyone involved in breakfasting that day, including myself, our ship remained firmly on its original course while we all continued having our meal interrupted by those damn rays from above. Have you ever heard someone actually say, "Do you know who I am?" The city was pretty religious, but it was never really an issue. Up until Karen walked in. I used to work at a printing shop. We used to do signs and posters for people locally. We had done a poster for her before, but it was one of our stock posters, so it wasn't custom. Even then I had heard she was sort of snarky. But this day she was doing this custom poster. It was some crazy religious message, but I honestly don't remember the specifics. It took a while to get the poster to somewhere she was happy with it, but finally she seemed to like it. Just have to check out and deliver it to her. I looked up and smiled, telling her, "All right, looks good. I can have this for you tomorrow afternoon and it will be $255. She replies, "I'll pick it up at noon." She was already giving attitude. "We don't work on your schedule, lady, we'll try and get it done for you by noon, but I can't promise it." She made that white person face, the one where it's almost like a smile but with no teeth, and says, "Fine. I'll pay when I pick it up." Another issue. Obviously you have to pay before picking up the poster. We aren't going to make it before you pay. Sorry, we don't do custom work without prepayment. She looks at me incredulously, like I have two heads. What? I smile, and say, "Policy, sorry. That may work with other people but not with me. I don't follow that policy." I almost laughed out loud. Why does she think she gets to decide? White women are hilarious. I smile again, and reply, "Then we can't start your order." Now she's really starting to get worked up. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I do for this city? Who does this woman think she is? Batman? I know for a fact that she doesn't do anything for this city other than ask for the manager. No. Not at all. But you're not the person who will fire me if I don't take prepayment on a $255 custom order, so he's most important in this equation. This is where she really started to get deep in her bag. You side with whomever you like because I know that Jesus stands by my side and he proclaimeth you wicked. Shiver me timbers. Good to know. And if Jesus wanted a banner, I'd ask him to prepay as well unless I hear it from Ken that I don't have to. Would you like his phone number? You and Jesus can work something out with him. She just got furious, asked for my manager, and the manager told her the exact same thing. She ended up just prepaying and picking it up a bit after noon the next day. Only she did it angrily. I still don't know who she was.
I went through my partner's phone and I found some deeply disturbing things. This may get too specific and he may see it, but I don't care. I can't tell anyone IRL about this, so I just need to get this off my chest before I explode. My partner got drunk on Saturday night. When he does this, I make him sleep downstairs as I often have to work early and he likes to make a lot of noise. He left his phone on the nightstand near our bed, and he was passed out downstairs. He got a text at 4:30 a.m. from his sister that woke me up. I don't know what clicked in my head, but I just had to go through his phone. Something in my gut just told me to do it, and I did. What I found shook me to my core. I knew he struggled with looking at copious amounts of explicit material. That's fine. We all watch that stuff sometimes, and while I think he overindulges, I keep it to myself, no matter how low it makes my self-esteem. But I found out he was saving photos of my friends. He was stalking their social media and saving their photos for his special folder. Some of these friends were mutual friends of ours. Some of them were my high school friends that he doesn't even know. The pics he saved here like bikini shot photos or gym photos. Innocent in nature, but my partner is just a perv. Like, no woman in my social circle is safe to post photos anymore without my partner creeping on them. It's disgusting. Not to mention, it makes me feel like shit knowing my partner wants them and not me. And then, I found something even worse. I found nothing super explicit, but still disturbing in nature, still enough to make me want to throw up. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. I can't even talk about this part so much because it makes me effing sick. I threw his phone at him and told him to get out. I confronted him with the information I found and he looked like he was going to have a heart attack. He kept making excuses for the pictures, saying he downloaded them accidentally when downloading other explicit files. But how do you do that? How do you accidentally stumble across something like that? Trying to see him cover that up made me so effing sick I couldn't look at him. He had no excuses for creeping on my friends. No excuses for any of the things he had on his phone. All the while, he had been telling me he wants to get married and have kids. God, I wanted to throw up. He's saying he's gonna go to therapy, which is something he's been saying for the last 2 years. He says he's gonna fix himself. It's just too late for that. I can't even do anything about what I found in his phone because I know he deleted all of it already. We just signed a lease a few months ago and I'm gonna be stuck here with him for a while. I don't know how to go about healing when he literally lives with me. I don't know what to do now. I can't tell anyone about this because I know they're gonna judge the shit out of me. I can't cope with anything anymore and I have no one to turn to. Sorry for the long post. I just had to get all this off my chest.
I accidentally put my ring inside my daughter and now I'm struggling. Yesterday, I was making steak, carrots, corn and mashed potatoes for dinner, and I was wearing my diamond wedding ring. Unfortunately, I lost it in the process, but I didn't realize it until a few hours after supper was finished. Panic set in, and I began retracing my steps, but it was nowhere to be found. After racking my brain, it dawned on me that I had the ring on when I was cooking for some reason. On the off chance that it fell off while I was preparing food, my husband decided to use a metal detector to find it just in case. Much to our surprise, we discovered that our middle daughter had eaten it. She's always in a rush and eats a lot, so she just shovels it in. While I find it hard to believe that she swallowed my ring, it does make sense it was her out of anyone given her eating habits. Our doctor said it should pass on its own in the next few days. Now, here's where the conflict arises. Our daughter has an incredibly busy freshman schedule with her swim team practices and schoolwork. Missing practice could be a huge setback for her, and she's really dedicated. My husband is insisting that we do everything in our power to retrieve the ring, even if it means keeping her home from school and practice until it's recovered. I, on the other hand, feel partly responsible for this mess. It was my mistake to wear the ring while cooking, and I don't want our daughter to miss out on her commitments and opportunities because of my carelessness. She's worked hard to be where she is, and I don't want to jeopardize her academic or athletic future. I talked to her and explained the situation, telling her that if she happens to see the ring, she should try to recover it. She agreed to keep an eye out for it, but she didn't seem thrilled about it. Now, my husband thinks I'm not being fully committed to getting the ring back. He believes we should do everything in our power to retrieve it, even if it means disrupting our daughter's life for a while. Edit. I spoke to my daughter about the option of using a bag for her poop to help retrieve the ring. Unfortunately, she declined the idea but agreed to continue keeping an eye out for anything visible in her stool, just as she had been doing. However, that same night, she used the restroom at home, and I offered to help her look for the ring afterward. Without going into too much graphic detail, let's just say that I was quite surprised by the size of what she produced. This left me doubtful on whether she would ever find the ring. I had initially been hopeful. Unfortunately, that was not the case. On Sunday, when both my daughter and my husband's schedules aligned, we decided to use the metal detector again, but this time it did not beep. I believe we have insurance on the ring, and I won't be getting a 1.5 carat ring again without it. What is the most bizarre thing you've caught yourself doing after your brain's autopilot misfire? 1. Rubbed aftershave in my hair and put gel on my face. The worst part was that after I put the aftershave in my hair, I laughed at myself. I thought, fuck, what was all that about? And then added the hair gel to my skin too. As a teenager, I worked at McDonald's. My McDonald's was 24 hours, and during the summer I worked the overnight shift. My sleep schedule would get all messed up. My parents woke me up for dinner one evening. I zombie walked to the table and sat down. My dad asked me to say grace. I ball my head and say, thank you for choosing McDonald's. May I take your order? 3. I picked up my toothbrush to brush my teeth, but I also had the urge to piss, so I obviously tossed my toothbrush into the toilet. 4. I took the train home, then realized I drove to work. That was a long night. 5. I once got my car impounded by a brain autopilot. I lived across the street from a gas station and didn't drive very often. Once I was filling it up, went inside to buy something, forgot I was getting gas and walked home. A few days later, I reported my car stolen since I couldn't find it in the apartment garage. About a month later, I got a call from the police saying my car had gone up for auction, and only then was it discovered it had been reported stolen. I had to pay about $1,500 in impound fees to get it back. Definitely one of the dumbest things I've ever done. 6. Let's just say that now, whenever I'm looking for my phone, the first thing I check is to see if it's currently in my hands. 7. I dropped my pants when going through the TSA. For those who fly in the super early morning, it can be rough. I purposely didn't drink coffee so I could sleep on the plane. I was on the security line and did the normal routine of taking stuff out of my pockets and putting them in my laptop bag. Then off with the shoes placed on top of my luggage. Then off comes the belt as usual. Then, of course, when you take off your belt, you take off your pants. Nope. Damn it. Put them back on and stood there like, what the fuck? For a moment as I finished up in security. Luckily not that many people fly at like 4 a.m. 8. I tried to mail my buddy a check and it had been a while since I mailed anything long enough to forget how mail works, apparently. What I did was I wrote my name and address in the center and his name in the upper left-hand corner. The letter then got returned to me, but still my first thought wasn't whoops, I failed at mailing this check. Instead it was, well, I guess this stamp is old and the price of stamps went up. So I put another stamp on it and sent it again to myself again. My mailman must think I'm an idiot. Am I the jerk for telling my brother the truth on why I don't ask him for anything? I, 19F, have 3 brothers. My oldest brother Dave got married to Sarah in May. I study halfway across the world from my hometown where my family are. I got really sick a few months ago and rushed to the nearest hospital. Turns out they don't accept my insurance and I had to pay out of pocket. I was €50 short and called everyone I could, but no one was picking up. I then called my oldest brother Dave because he always picks up, and asked him to send me 50 and I would send it back once I get paid in a few days. He told me not to be ridiculous and he didn't need me to pay him back 50. Sarah called me that night and asked how I was doing. After the chit-chat, she asked if I could ask someone else the next time I need money because my brother is a married man. I was shocked, but I apologized and said I offer to pay him back. She said it's fine, but next time I should plan my finances in advance so I won't have to rely on a married man. It's my birthday soon and Dave called to ask what I wanted. I said nothing and that I was fine, but I appreciated him asking. My other brother called to ask what I want. And I said I wanted some money to heat my apartment. I couldn't afford to heat it this month. He was baffled that I was so broke I couldn't afford heating and I wasn't saying anything. He started tearing up on the phone call with me and ended the call and sent me $500. Later. I guess he told Dave about the call with me because Dave called me and started interrogating me on why. I just told him I didn't need anything and then asked my youngest brother. He sounded offended and asked why. I feel like I can't rely on him. I asked, haven't you spoken to Sarah about this? He was confused on what I meant and I told him about the conversation I had with Sarah. After he sent me the €50 for the hospital. He said he'd call me back, but he hasn't. A cousin of mine sent me a message a few hours ago saying I was a bitch for meddling in their marriage and that Dave didn't owe me anything. I was like, when did I say Dave owed me anything? I have never relied on him for anything, nor do I plan on it. I mean, I feel bad that Dave and Sarah are fighting it. I can't help but feel weirded out that Sarah did that behind his back and he had no clue. I've been extremely anxious and I can't stop shaking. Am I the jerk again? I hope this reaches some of you low. So my middle brother called me yesterday and asked me to explain what's been going on. And I did. He's always had quite the temper and got very angry about the Sarah situation. He mentioned how Dave is paying the rent for Sarah, so for Sarah to ask me not to ask Dave for anything at all was so messed up when her own brother is getting his rent paid every single month by Dave. TBH, this made me mad. It's okay for Dave to support her brother, but God forbid he sends me 50 euros for an emergency, right? Anyway, Dave called me and we had a heart-to-heart conversation. I explained to him what I've been going through here and he was silent for a while. I did mention that if I was in urgent need of something, I still had my other two brothers to ask. So it really wasn't that terrible. He said he feels so guilty that I was suffering and he didn't know. He said he won't tell me the details about his discussion with his wife, but he was heartbroken that she would even think of telling me not to rely on him and has asked her to give me an apology, which she said she did. But at the time of the call I hadn't received anything. I said I haven't gotten an apology from her and he told me to check my messages again. Still nothing. He was silent for a while and just sighed. I also mentioned the text my cousin sent, which he asked me to forward to him. He said he felt so bad that people so much older than me were treating me like this, and he will deal with so it never happens again. That was this morning? I got a message from Sarah, not sure how that's meant to be an apology, but to summarize, she said, "I'm sorry if you took what I said as you can't ever rely on your brother. He's your brother, and I would never intentionally try to make you feel like he couldn't do anything for you. I'm also hurt that you couldn't speak to me if you had a problem with it. We could have solved this as sisters. Now what the F am I meant to say to that? I know she'll make time the villain if I don't respond, but honestly, what on earth is that? I am a psychological expert from Stanford. Here are some cool tricks. Act a bit like the person you're talking to, copy their movements or words slightly to make them feel closer to you. 2. Unfinished business. Start something but don't finish it. People tend to remember and think more about things that are left incomplete. 3. Halo of good vibes. Show off something good about yourself, and it can make people think everything about you is good. 4. Nodding magic. Gently nod when you're asking for something. It makes people more likely to agree with you. 5. Little yes, big yes. Get a small yes first before asking for something big. It makes people more likely to say yes again. 6. Give and take. Do something nice, and people will want to do something nice back. It's like a good deed chain. 7. First offer power. Be the first to suggest a deal. It sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. 8. How you frame it. Share info in a way that shapes how people see it. For example, saying save $20 is more tempting than 20% off. 9. Time's ticking. Say something is available for a short time to make people decide faster. 10. Quiet power. Stay silent during a talk. The other person might spill more details or agree to more things. 11. A confident person is someone who is humble, respects everyone, regardless of anyone. 12. The best life lessons come from how we heal and rise from adversity. 13. Really rich people don't show off what they have. Even if others are aware of it, they will remain humble. 14. Someone who likes to shout and talk about unimportant things is a person who is not confident. Empty drum gives loud sound. 15. A person who always smiles even at strangers is a person who doesn't care what other people think. 16. A person who is willing to take the blame is the one who is most responsible. 17. A person who cannot show sympathy and empathy for a victim is cruel and sadistic. 18. Accepting criticism in a positive way and continuing to strive for progress is a person who will achieve the desired achievement. 19. If you're in a meeting and you think someone is likely to become aggressive towards you, sit next to them as it then becomes harder and awkward. 20. When you want something from someone, ask more than you want, and when they say no, you may ask for actual amount. 21. When you meet someone and shake hand, make sure that your hand is warm because it makes you far more attractive and impressive to the other person. 22. When a group of people start laughing, each one in the group will probably look to the one they feel closest to. 23. Having a heated argument. Ask the other person if they are okay because they're breathing really hard. They will stop arguing and try to pay attention to their breathing, resulting in the end of that discussion. 24. When you're bargaining with someone, convene in a coffee shop, so your partner is less inclined toward aggression. People tend to be more selfish when they see work-related objects than when they're surrounded by neutral items. 25. Give someone something they need so they feel obliged to return the favor. When they thank you for helping out, say of course, it's what partners do for each other. 26. Subtly mimic the way someone is sitting and speaking to get them to like you more. They probably won't even notice you're copying them. 27. When someone disagrees with you, speak faster so they have less time to process what you're saying. If the person agrees with you, speak more slowly, so they have time to evaluate the message. 28. Humans are biologically wired to become attached to what's familiar. Which is why we hold on to things even if they're bad for us. 29. When woman is attracted towards man, she speaks in a higher pitch than normal. 30. Men change their minds 2 or 3 times more often than women do. 31. Most women are attracted to men who possess a strong sense of humor as it indicates higher intelligence and honesty. 32. When a man spots a woman he finds attractive, he holds his stare for an average of 8.2 seconds. 33. A woman will only argue with someone she truly cares for. Arguing less occurs when she's less interested.